Everyone, welcome to this session of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. I am joined by my colleagues, Council Vice President Friedson and Council Member Katz. We have a number of operating budgets and CIP amendments to get through this afternoon. So we're first going to start with the Human Resources Department, and I'd invite folks to come on up. Thank you. And before we dig into some of the details, Director Anderson, I thought it might be helpful if you just gave us an overview of the work you're doing and the budget requests this year.
Thank you. Tracy Anderson, Director, Office of Human Resources. Thank you so much for this time. I know that it's a scheduled time, but you don't have to be so gracious with your time, and I appreciate it. I've had the pleasure of meeting with all of you and many others of your colleagues to share sort of what the challenges are and the way forward in human resources. So right now we're working to stabilize our organization, stabilize our operations, and to bring some standardization to our internal procedures. We've started our collaborative meetings with department heads to talk about their vacancies, to talk about their needs around recruitment. We started with the top 10 departments based on their number of employees eligible to retire. We've collaborated with council to update the medical history form and to make several other upgrades. We're working in partnership with Director Roper and TEBS around our applicant tracking system to bring that forward, and we're working with OMB to prioritize our position vacancies. So I was asked about what the vision is for human resources, and I would say that this is not just about the Office of Human Resources. It's about who we want to be as an employer in our region. So for the candidate, we want candidates to be able to apply for jobs with ease from any device they choose to, and or to be able to access help to apply for jobs, not the sort of 100 different ways you have to access the system right now. We want people to know in less than 3 months that they're going to be interviewed for a job. We'd like them to be onboarded in fewer than 45 days. We want some transparency in the wage setting process. I don't know if we'll ever get back to steps, but it shouldn't be mysterious and wonderful, magical about how we apportion salaries on hire. For employees, I would like us to have space for people to grow in their careers. People come to government for all sorts of reasons. Stability. We do interesting and valuable work. People come here to do good service and good work. But they should know what the career path looks like for them. They should have access to training that builds a career for them. And for our employees, as we're winding down our careers, they should be able to have a benefit that they can count on, something that they can depend on as they wind up their careers. So the County Executive's 24 budget supports those plans. So as I said, today's budget discussion isn't just about human resources, it's who we want to be. So our budget focuses on talent acquisition and management, as well as the HR infrastructure. We have asked for funds to upgrade our recruitment practices. We have a process now where we post jobs and expect people to apply for them. We have to do more than that in order to compete in this region. We have to bring some rigor to it. And so we've asked for 2 positions to be really scrappy people, scrappy resources to go out and create pipelines for candidates, to work with our education systems, to bring up internship programs that are meaningful, that lead to future work. We're asking for funds to augment our talent management programs. We need funds for management and supervisory leadership training. We've asked for funds to begin reforming our classification plan. I've said to you all, and others have said to you, how old our class plan is. There's some jobs that are more than 20 years since they've been reviewed. We don't know whether we're making the right choices in terms of salary, or if we're holding people to the wrong kind of standards when they come in. We've asked for funds for positions to help manage our leave processes. The leave in the county, there are multiple leave programs. They're bound by collective bargaining agreements, the regs, and other principles, and they pancake. So you can have FMLA with paid parental leave, with parental leave, with sick leave bank from McGeo, and having people to understand how those leave programs intersect and how to manage them is critical to us. We've also asked you for help with our infrastructure. We need additional staff for class and comp activities. We've asked for help with centralized processing. Some of our systems, most of our systems don't really talk to each other. So someone's making a change to a job that takes 117 steps. I'm really not making that up. When I was in rec, we had a series of employees who went from part-time to full-time. I had to figure out what segment 8 was and find out how to manipulate that. That's not work that I did all the time. And there are other departments that have many, many more jobs like that that need help doing it. Luckily, I ran into a staff person, Emily, who's left us since to go to the grants office. But that resource was invaluable in helping to make sure that those got processed on time and that staff were able to access the full-time pay. So those are just a few of the items that we've asked for. I've provided you with a handout that kind of outlines the big items, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I want to thank the staff who's here, Sam Freshour, who put together the packet for you, Kimberly Williams, who's our leader for class and comp, and Jenna Shovlin, who's our budget extraordinaire. And I'd also like you to know from the OMB office, Shantae Jackson, who has been a big protector and fan of OHR.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm just happy to walk through the staff report or whoever you'd like me to
Yeah, why don't you walk through the staff report?
Okay, great. So the OHR budget recommendation for FY24, as always, includes two components, the general fund component and the employee health self-insurance fund. The health self-insurance fund is where we budget the expenditures, for employee health claims, which is why it's so large. And you've already talked about the expenditures related to that as part of the compensation and benefits work sessions you had in April. So we're going to focus today on the general fund portion of OHR's budget, which the executive recommends for FY24 at about $13.2 million, an increase of nearly 40% from FY23, and also an increase of 18 full-time equivalent positions. And we'll go through the different components of each of that as we walk through the staff report. On page 2, I've put together an initial table that classifies the different increases the executive recommends based on what would have to go on the reconciliation list based on the the council president's guidance, as well as the items that would be the non-reconciliation list items. And as we go through each one, we can talk about that a little bit more detail. For the health self-insurance fund, I do want to note that there is some increases in there for compensation adjustments related to the employees whose salaries are charged to the fund. And that's the only change other than claims adjustments, expected claims adjustments that's in the self-insurance fund. So beginning in section B, starting at the bottom of page 2, we'll start walking through some of the changes recommended by the executive. In the classification and compensation area, the executive recommends a total of $785,000 or 3 FTEs to enhance the class and comp structure. These include 1 FTE for a new classification analyst responsible for reviewing the classification of positions, conducting desk audits and occupational studies, and working collaboratively with department leads and other subject matter experts to establish new classes of work. 2.0 FTEs, that would be compensation analysts, looking at the wage and salary studies, internal equity review, and salary setting on hiring. Of note, one of these positions is new, and the second position is an existing position that was repurposed from the Department of Transportation during FY23 and was already funded. The committee will recall last year it recommended that OHR look at potentially repurposing some positions from other vacant positions from other county governments or funded positions, and they've done that as part of this budget. And so as we go through, you'll see some of those. This also includes $500,000 for a contractor to review the county's structure and devise a plan to update the classification and compensation framework. I did want to note that this review differs from the required audit of the Merit System Protection Board, which the committee discussed in an earlier work session. And OHR staff can discuss that in a little bit more detail if you'd like to. Centralized processing unit support includes an increase of 87,000 and 2 FTEs. These would be mid-year hires, which is why the cost for FY24 is so low. And these would focus on some of the core internal service functions, support functions that OHR does that Director Anderson mentioned, and helping the other departments to be able to process the transactions and things like that. Within the director's office, there is an addition of 303,002 FTEs. One FTE is for a deputy director position, and that was a mid-year creation that has been either filled or just about to be filled. We have a table later in the staff report that goes over those positions, as well as a mid-year creation in FY23 for a communications and outreach manager position that has been filled. In terms of paid parental leave program support, in the middle of page 4, there's 218,002 FTEs recommended to support the paid parental leave program. One position would be in the director's office program area, and the other is in the occupational medical services or OMS program area. And council staff notes that the 2 FTEs aligns with the estimated staffing in the fiscal impact statement when the council was considering Bill 10-22 for this program. In section 5 at the bottom of page 4, OMS and FROM's clinic contract. This includes 608,002 FTEs related to this contract, and $407,000 is a fixed price increase related to the county's transition to a new contract with Concentra to provide these services. And then the 2 positions are have already been created and filled during FY23, and those used funding that was in operating costs was switched over to personnel costs during the year to fill those positions once the new contract switched over, because the new contract doesn't provide the same types of services as the old contract did, and so county staff need to provide those services now. In terms of recruitment and selection, on page 5, the executive recommends just under $300,000 in 4 FTEs. In this area, 211,002 FTEs will be doing the full range of recruitment and hiring activities. And these positions are repurposed HHS positions that were funded in FY23 and have already been filled. Again, 88,002 FTEs is for recruitment and sourcing support, and similar to the other positions we mentioned earlier, these are mid-year hires, which reflects the results in such a low cost for those things. Within the training and organizational development section, we're now on the bottom of page 5. There is $325,000 in 2 FTEs for a new initiative for a management and leadership training program. And this would focus on leadership training within the MLS, Management Leadership Services ranks. There is $125,000 recommended for an employee recognition program. And then there is $112,000 and 1 FTE for training and organizational development program support. And this position is a repurposed Department of Transportation position, but this is a position that was not funded in FY23. And so because it does not have any funding associated with it, has not been filled. And so this is a position that would go on the reconciliation list as opposed to the other ones that have already been filled and were funded already. And the last item for increase is $275,400 for advertising, publications, and subscriptions. And OHR provided an explanation that's included on page 6, but $140,000 would be used to cover costs with reaching out to recruitment sourcing platforms for advertisement, and then $135,000 would be part of a contract with that is used for innovations and strategic activities, looking at surveying candidates and existing employees, and for technical support and guidance. On page 7, we've included a list of all the FY24 new positions, all 18 positions, and broke them down a little bit based on which positions were repurposed or already funded, and whether those have been filled or are almost filled. I mean, you can see the first 7 of those have been have existing funding and have been filled or have offers pending. There's 3 positions that were repurposed or mid-year creations that are not filled and have not been funded. And then 8 positions at the bottom that are new requests and have not been funded either. So in total, 11 of the 18 positions are new positions that don't have any funding associated with them, whereas the other 7 already have funding in FY23. In terms of FY24 vacancies and lapse, as of April 10th, OHR had 11 vacant positions, which are shown on the table at the top of page 8. 1 position, a manager 2, had been vacant for over 1 year. The executive does include $338,997 in reductions to OHR budgets in FY24 due to both historical lapse and one-time lapse savings related to the long-term vacancies. In terms of racial equity and social justice review, OHR received a rating of 2 stars out of the 0 to 3 scale, indicating the department demonstrates a commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice in Montgomery County. And as with the other departments, we've included the detailed information from ORESJ in the staff report. And then at the bottom of page 8, I just include an initial staff recommendation for the items that do need to be put on the reconciliation list, how the committee might want to consider them in terms of high priority and priority. And so I will turn it back over to you, Chair Stewart, for questions and discussion.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for that. I think the easiest way probably to go through this is to go through the chart on staff recommendations and take one item at a time. And I think if we start with the classification and compensation structure improvements, a couple of questions I had, Director Anderson, if you could talk to us about the $500,000 for the contractor. And then one question I had regarding this is, does it make sense to have fill these 3 positions before you have a contractor come back with results, or wait for the results and then see what positions are needed? So if you could talk about the sort of the interaction between what the contractor will do and then these 3 positions.
Sure. So there are several pieces of ongoing work that have to be done. Every June, the department receives requests from county employees who believe that they're working out of their class. They submit desk order requests through a June box. We also have several, I believe it's 7 in the collective bargaining agreement, position studies that we work on with McGeo. They identify 7 jobs that they'd like to have the series studied, and so that work continues. In addition to that, the new creations, all of that maintenance work around the position management is done by that team. They participate also with salary surveys for other government organizations. The PMR report that you see is a compilation that we do, but it's information that's pulled from other sources. We participate in all of those things. So there's a body of work that has to happen regardless of whether the class plan is up to date or not. The contractor services would be designed for them to look at where we are and to help us to plot a way forward in that group. We don't know if all of these positions are the right ones. There are 490-something job classes. We don't know if they're the right classes to have anymore. We don't know if we still need office services coordinators, certainly not ones who keep calendar in a paper book. And when we looked at the universe of, not the universe either, but regionally, how other departments, other organizations have looked at their class plans, we looked at Fairfax. Fairfax did a breakdown of their work. They grouped their jobs into families, and they picked the environmental climate jobs as a way forward. They spent $600,000 just studying that group of jobs, a very small group of jobs. So we're hoping that we'll be able to find some organization that has class planning as its body of work, that can look at what we have and plot a way forward. That includes looking at which jobs we have to see if these are the right jobs, and to help us to keep on a schedule for maintaining them. The staff pieces are very important, though, because these are staff who will help to understand what the work is that the contractor brings forward. We don't want to have contractors looking at the contractor's work. We want to make sure that we're fully staffed to do that, to maintain our operation and to be able to receive well the work of the contractor.
And how many folks are on staff now who do the work the ongoing work you were discussing about looking
I
at this
believe
stuff?
there are 4. We have some vacancies in those groups. 3 classifiers and 2 comp analysts.
And are there any vacancies in those right now?
Yes, there's a comp analyst vacant, and then we have an offer pending for a classifier to start on Monday. A comp analyst to start on Monday.
Okay. Any questions?
Go ahead. You can go first.
Councilmember Katz, you can go first.
Thank you. Well, maybe you won't have any questions after I clear this all up. Sort of doubt that, by the way. First, Ms. Anderson, thank you very much for everything you're doing. And I mean that sincerely, because this department, among all of our departments, right now, Montgomery County is having so much difficulty having people do the necessary work that our residents need and require. And it's you who are going to get us back to where we need to be. I know that's not an easy task, but it's a task that we need to have. I have said time and time again, and this is like me quoting me, but I believe that if we're going to have our staff, we need to make certain our staff has the resources necessary to get the job done. And therefore, I'm fine with the suggestions that are, as we go through, the suggestions that are being brought forward. I do think we need to advertise and recruit more than we've ever done before. There was a time, I think, in Montgomery County and other places that if somebody said, the county's looking for people to work, 270 got backed up, not because necessarily for traffic, but because people were looking to come here, and then our competition realized that they could get those same people. And that has hurt us dramatically. I've said that by doing what we've done the last several years, we've actually became a training grounds for many people who went to the other governments who were faster than we were hiring people. And I found it very comforting to say that, to hear you say that we need to do a faster, better, and quick and more efficient job on that. So I'm fine with the suggestions as given.
Thank you. Council Vice President Friesen.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all of your work. I really do appreciate it. A series of questions are not reflective of my faith in your leadership and management skills. And I really do appreciate your candor and the approach that you've taken to this job, which is a tough job, and it might be tougher now than it's been in recent memory, if not ever. So I acknowledge that. Having said that, I think it's hard for anybody to understand that we have 1,500 vacancies in county government, 1,200 to 1,500, that you only have the ability currently, as you told us last time, to hire 552 people right now, meaning we're not even actively recruiting almost 1,000 people, and then we have to create new positions. I can't explain that to a resident because, frankly, I don't understand it myself. And it sounds like the council staff recommendation is to approve all 11 of the new positions. I just want to make sure I understand this, some of which are high priority and some of which are priority. There's 18 total, 11 are effectively new, and the recommendation is to approve all 11. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, it would be to put them all on the reconciliation list.
Well, approve them all. Well, yes. But I mean, okay. I mean, I guess your thinking is that we're not going to approve everything on the reconciliation list, so why not just put it all on there? I don't think that's the best approach. I think we have to make choices here. And I think, to me, we should put on the positions that are high priority, and we should limit those, and we should not put on anything else. Because, if everything's a priority, there are no priorities. And this is a budget where everything is a priority. We're prioritizing fixing the process for recruitment, and so we have substantially increased, 35% in personnel, 50% in operating expenses, this department. We have a priority of supporting our rank and file employees who are doing this work and are working harder than ever, and so we've given them some of the largest compensation increases in the history of the county. We have education challenges. We've done huge prioritization in education. We can't prioritize everything all at once. And I have to be honest, I am skeptical of our ability to execute all of these improvements all at once, all in this budget. I just don't think we're going to do it well. And I think we are going to destroy our credibility with the public when we ask them to pay a significant property tax increase in order to fund us solving almost every problem all at once, which is nearly impossible to execute. And I think we're putting ourselves in a position to fail, and we're asking residents to pay a price and setting ourselves up for them to be very upset with us when we can't meet that standard. And that's not your fault. You're doing everything that you can. That's not this department's fault. That's not any individual person's fault within county government. But I just, at the outset of this conversation, I think it's important to note, I find it very difficult to accept the fact that even with these positions, that we are going to be able to execute at an extremely high level that our residents expect and deserve, especially when we ask them to pay a significant property tax increase, that we're going to be able to perform and to follow through and to execute. It would surprise me. With that said, I would like you to answer two questions about this. One, why we can't cover these positions out of existing vacancies. Nobody knows more about vacancies than your department does. And number two, specifically related to the DOT position, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. That position was added last year to DOT and is being moved to this department. I just want to make sure I understand that.
It wasn't an FY23 addition to DOT. It was just an existing DOT vacant position that was repurposed over to OHR.
From 23, so it's an existing position, but it's a long-standing position in DOT. Okay, so one position of all of these positions has been repurposed from an existing vacancy, but the other 11 new positions are not.
Well, there were a total of 4 that were repurposed, 3 of which were funded, 2 from HHS and 2 from DOT. One of the DOT positions was not funded. The other one was, and that was repurposed in 23.
Okay, so it's an unfunded position from fiscal year 23.
So it was a vacant position. It had been a long-standing vacant position in DOT, and there wasn't funding associated, but it was an established PIN. So they repurposed it, transferred it to us, and that's what we made into the, it's an HR specialist, sorry.
Okay, why can't all these positions come out of the nearly 1,000 positions that are vacant, that are not even being actively recruited?
Let me just say this, Mr. Friedson, and just to clarify, at the time I came to speak with you, HR had 500 vacancies that were being recruited, that were in active stages of recruitment. OHR doesn't control all 1,500 of the vacancies. Departments prioritize the vacancies and their lapsed targets in partnership with OMB. So the number of jobs that we've filled to date, the full-time, part-time, permanent jobs we've filled to date, number a little over 780. That's ahead of where we were last year in terms of permanent merit positions. We can fill jobs. We're having challenges keeping employees alongside filling jobs. So if we want to talk about, the vacancy number looks bad. It just does. But we're not different than any other government in the region. We're here at a time when we're just coming out of COVID. We've got a 4% national unemployment rate. Everybody's not looking for jobs. And when we have people who have the opportunity to work full-time in remote settings, full-time remote part-time work that might pay more than our full-time front-facing work, that's where we are. We're coming out of COVID. We're coming out of a hiring freeze where everything got dumped at one time. We're working with departments to prioritize those things, to prioritize jobs where there are front-facing services being delivered, where there are contractor services being delivered as a backfill, and or where there's overtime that's being used to meet the service demands.
I absolutely appreciate that. I will acknowledge we are the only jurisdiction in the region that is adding 137 new positions at a time when we have 1,500 vacancies and we're asking residents to pay a 10% property tax. So I appreciate what you're saying. And again, these aren't the issues of your creation, and you're doing a great job in trying to address them, but it is not fair for me to say that we are not different from other jurisdictions when in fact this budget that is being proposed by the county executive is dramatically different than any other jurisdiction in the state and than any other jurisdiction in the region. And I think we just have to acknowledge that in the decisions that we make. We have to reflect that. So you filled 780 positions this year, which is impressive. But the reality is we're losing a lot of positions too, so I'm not sure what the net is. Do you have the net number?
Good. We've hired 779 new employees, and 609 employees have separated from the county.
Okay, so this is the concern that I have. We have net filled 179 positions. We have nearly 1,500 vacancies in county government. We're talking about adding positions when we have no chance, zero, of being back here next year. Despite you could work as hard as possible, work better than you've ever worked before. I have full faith that you will do that. And yet there is no chance that we will come even remotely close to filling all the vacancies that we have in county government. And at no time, and what I don't understand is how there hasn't been an understanding of, okay, if we can't possibly fill all 1,500 vacancies, then let's figure out what are the most important ones to fill that are most urgent to fill, and let's not focus on the others. And if we need to add new positions, let's repurpose the positions that we'll never have a chance of filling. Probably not next year and maybe not even the year after. And repurpose those to start doing the actual work of reorganizing, restructuring county government that we've been hearing about for 5 years, and that we're now bringing on additional consultants to help us with. The challenge that I have in deciding on this budget is, I've seen this movie before and I know how it ends. We had a consultant come in to tell us what to do with vacancies. They were supposed to find 100 vacancies. We spent $92,000 for the consultant. They were delayed in their report. They came up with 9 vacancies, not 100. 100 is already way too low. We have 1,500. 9 vacancies. And not a single one of the recommendations that we can tell have been executed in that. And now we're going to bring on another consultant to address another aspect of the vacancy issue. And so, I'll yield back to colleagues, but I'm not supportive of adding any new positions unless there is a reasonable case of why we can't repurpose existing positions for these purposes. I just don't understand that.
Just one point, though. The cost efficiency study does state that class and comp needs to be looked at. That's where the $500,000 for the consultant comes from. That's where our request for 2 additional staff comes from. The study also says that management training and supervisory training should be implemented. That's what we're trying to do with those funds. I understand that that it's a challenge. It's hard to look at your constituents in the eye and say that you need to increase taxes to meet these demands. But our employees, 60% of the employees live in this county. They do the living, the working, and dying in this county. And we have to look at them. Our front-facing employees are seeing our residents, who may be their neighbors and friends and loved ones, at the worst possible moment in their life. And we want to make a way forward so that we are looking for new ways to hire in our county. We want to start doing some real outreach to our county residents, to put them in these positions, to make a path forward. And I understand that the 1,500 number does sound outrageous. It does. But that's not a new number. In 2018, there were 1,000 vacant jobs. This number is just compounded because of COVID.
Right. My only point is that if you keep adding new positions, it's going to compound, it's going to get bigger, it's going to look worse, and it's going to be a tougher argument to make to taxpayers who pay for county government to do what it does, to explain to them why they're needed. The last point that I will make on this, because you raised it, you are right that some of these aspects were in that report. I've read that report probably 50 times. The sixth recommendation talked about a teeny tiny thing to do, and it was one of the areas that said could help fund some of these efforts. And it related to just taking some of the retirements, a small proportion of the retirements in supervisory roles, and repurposing those roles. We have done zero of that. And so the purpose of that report was to find savings, to create efficiencies, to make government run better. And we have done none of that work. And so it's not fair to say we should spend the money on the parts that cost money, but not do the actual real work of fulfilling the recommendations when they come forward to actually find cost savings. And I think it's really important, and it's the same thing. We're going to have this exact same conversation here next year, and we're going to have this exact same conversation here the year after, unless we start changing the way that we address these issues. And one of them would be to look at first the overwhelming number of vacancies that have gone from 1,000 in 2018 to 1,500 today, and say, can we repurpose these positions to make county government work just a little bit better? And I think that would be a better approach.
The county executive has charged Ms. Bryant and me, along with our colleagues, to look at the vacancies. When we have our collaborative discussions with departments, we're saying to them that you have to tell us what's happening with the vacancies. What are you doing with the money? I had to find out from Jenna. That was the first question that they were asking us. How are you doing all these things if you don't have these jobs? And we had to itemize what we were using the money for. So these things are in progress. The county executive has tasked all of us with being more intentional about dealing with the vacancies and about looking at our operations to see where we can cut or redistribute the work. I don't come to you asking these things lightly. I know very well what challenges we have before us. I'm a resident of this county for 30 years. I don't have one child in public school, but those things are important. And if we want all boats to rise, we have to make appropriate investments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Katz?
And I'll be quick, but I think we're focused too much, and I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Vice President, but I think we're focused too much on the numbers. The fact that we've hired 700 or whatever the numbers are, and that we have only netted 100 and plus people, it depends on the job that you have actually hired for and the people that have actually left. I do think we need to repurpose government at some point. I don't know that it's going to be today, and it's not going to be in this budget as such. But if you're looking for a quarterback, the fact that you have a vacancy for linemen is not helping you. And so that's what we need to be doing. We need to figure out what we need and to get ourselves back on track. Because at this point, we're not on track. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move us forward. We're talking about the first item, which was the classification and compensation team. And I just want to make sure I'm clear. So if we did move forward with the new positions, that would mean we have 4 classification analysts and 4 compensation analysts at the end of the day. Is that correct in your department to handle the work you outlined before? About right. Okay. I very much appreciate what Council Vice President Friedson said, particularly about the overall picture. But I think I'm with Councilmember Katz, particularly on this item, knowing how important it is to get those classifications correct and to make sure that the employees we have now are doing the jobs that they were hired to do. And frustration in that area will only lead to us losing some good people. So I think yes.
So we had the conversation about the Merit Protection Board and their efforts to look at classification and compensation. How does that funding dovetail with this work and this consultant's efforts?
So the Merit System Protection Board is required to audit the class plan periodically. They didn't do it the last time because of COVID. It's different work. They're monitoring, overseeing, auditing the class plan where we are trying to manage and perfect the class plan.
So my understanding is that you're going deep on the descriptions, correct? The position descriptions, and an audit does not do that.
We're going deep on the classification requirements that say that you have to have X number of years' experience and that the job has this scope of work. The audit from MSPB looks at the record to see if we're acting in compliance with the class plan.
All right, so that is 2-1, a high priority on the first item.
And if you can hire a new quarterback, we'd appreciate
Yes.
that too.
Could it just be noted that I think it should be funded out of existing vacancies?
We'll note that, yep.
The next item on the list is the Management and Leadership Training Program. And this includes $325,000 and more, plus 2 FTEs, and this is a new initiative for the staff. Is there anything specific you'd like to highlight on this one, in addition to what Mr. Howard told us?
So for the Management Leadership Training Program, the county used to, when I came to the county, it was like, you've come to Xanadu, because everybody wanted to be here, and there was training available. There was nothing that the county didn't do to make sure that leaders were successful. And there was a cohort-developed training. There were 6 or 7 sessions where we talked about strategic planning, coaching, mentoring employees, learning the county values for how we operate it. That included all of the operational bits, procurement, human resources, all of those things. That went by the wayside when the Great Recession happened. This is to restore that. We've got a lot of individuals who've been promoted up, good technicians who've been promoted into leadership roles, who may or may not be fully equipped to manage their staffs. That's what this is to do. We're partnering with universities at Shady Grove to do this. They are working with us to prove proof of concept. We're going to start some of the work this summer with them footing the bill for this. These funds would help us to bring the program to scale.
I very much appreciate this. I think given the budget situation we're in now, I agree with the staff recommendation that this is a priority and maybe something that we look at probably in the future, though I agree this is definitely important work to do, and I hope through the work you're doing with the University of Shady Grove, it'll give a good foundation, and hopefully we can fund it next year, but I'm not sure I see that for this year's budget.
I will just add one note for you. The county executive, when he met with me about this opportunity, said that he had gone to a meeting of staff, and these were MLS managers, and he just asked them to raise their hands if any of them had had management leadership training. Very few people raised their hands. And so when we hear about grievances and complaints from employees, it may not be, people are well-intentioned. I don't believe that anybody's actively trying to hurt someone. But I don't believe that we have done all we can do to make everyone ready for the roles that they're in. And this would be a long way forward in that regard.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Katz?
No, good.
Good. Councilmember, Vice Councilmember, whatever you are.
Can I just get a clarification? So I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying.
Yeah.
So council staff's recommending this as a priority. There's over $65 million on the high priority list at last count. So I think what you were saying is we'll put it on as a priority,
Yeah.
but that it would be difficult to fund.
I think it's probably going to be
in this.
difficult.
Okay, all right, I'll go along with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. All right. The next is the recruitment and sourcing support. And from what this sounded like, this was enabling your department to go beyond just posting a job announcement and description to actually being more active and proactive in that. And I thank you for the description on the pipeline and in finding talent. Within that, can you talk about how funds in this area would help us, move forward on our racial equity goals in the county versus what we're doing now?
So right now, we have maybe participated in 2 very small job fairs that I'm aware of during this fiscal year. We're hosting a grand event on Wednesday that has 750 or so registrants to come in and speak to us about county jobs. We're doing on-site interviews. There are 20 or so departments represented. We're very excited about it. But our racial equity social justice program, now some of this work was done before I came to put in the packet, but we have been working with Ms. Ward and her staff to talk about competencies that should be included in performance evaluations. That's something that'll be implemented during the coming fiscal year, and to advertise more broadly their mandatory training requirements. In terms of our recruitment efforts, we tend to skew to the same type of applicant, the people who know how to use the IRC process very well, the people who do web searches and are on Indeed or on LinkedIn and see the ads. But where we're not is out in the community, in colleges and universities, in the public school, talking about county government as a viable career going forward. We don't say anything about that. We're not out there being scrappy. We don't have people who are camped out on LinkedIn and scouring those resources to see maybe there's somebody out here who wants a career change. Maybe there's some mid-career person who wants to come here. Maybe there's a new graduate who wants to come here. We're just not in those spaces. And this money, these activities would help us to do that.
Mr. Howard, I think I have a question because I'm trying to match the chart with what's on page 5 under recruitment and selection and make sure I understand correctly the difference, because I'm seeing in the chart it says 87,893 versus the total of 299,677 on page 5. Am I comparing apples to apples here?
So the big chunk of that, the 211,000 and 2 FTEs were repurposed positions from HHS that were already funded and filled, so that's why they're not on the
Got it. Right, the
reconciliation
reconciliation,
list.
thank you.
So the only thing left is the 87,893.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so the full number, though, is the annualized cost, right?
For the 211,000, the 2 FTEs?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, it looks like on the reconciliation list that we're agreeing to fund 87,893, but what we're really doing is we're agreeing to fill these positions for a lapsed period of time for the first year, but then fully commit to a much, much higher number in the outgoing years,
That is
thereby exacerbating the structural budget deficit that starts next year at $145 million if the budget were to be approved as it was recommended to us by the county executive. So I just think it's important that we acknowledge the full impact of the decisions that we're making and be honest about it.
Councilmember Katz.
I believe if we're going to try to recruit and retain people, we have to have someone doing that work. And so I understand what you're saying, and it's a concern, but at some point, you're kicking the can, rather than kicking the can down the road, you're saying that there's not going to be a can there to kick. We have got to get people on board.
I just want to make sure I understand what we're putting on the reconciliation list. So it looks like in FY '23, you received 2 repurposed positions from HHS, and that is in the budget. That doesn't have to go on reconciliation. So what we're talking about is 2 more positions that would be put on reconciliation, so that it would be a total of 4 basically new positions for recruitment and selection. All right, correct. I think I agree with, well, you probably want them cut. So I would say I would keep these as a priority because we do have the 2 positions coming over from HHS. So you're good with that. All right.
I'd like it to be reflected that they should be taken out of existing vacancies.
Great. The next item is the centralized processing unit support. And this is, again, two new positions for this. Would you like to describe further what the two new positions would be doing?
So these are jobs, there are hundreds of transactions that happen in the system. A new job is approved or a raise is approved. Some part-time positions are made full-time. And so then there are a series of steps that have to be done in Oracle to finalize the transactions. It takes an inordinate amount of time. No system talks to any other system, and it makes you pull your hair out. Could it be even rounder and balder than I am if I had to do that every day? Departments are doing that. They're building those resources into wherever they can to do those services. We're HR, we should be able to help, and that's what those jobs are to do.
Mr. Howard, this was a high priority as a staff recommendation. Did you want to mention anything else on this?
Just in my view, the idea of having some of that administrative internal support for all the different departments that are processing these transactions on a day-to-day basis was a little bit, to me, more of a high priority than the recruitment and sourcing support positions that we just talked about. And that was how I came up with that initial proposed
Okay.
placement.
I'm good keeping it a high priority.
Right.
Councilmember?
Well, I'm trying to do the rounding and the balding for you here, and doing my best each day, getting closer and closer to that. So I'll absorb that for you. I'd like it to be taken out of existing vacancies.
See, I've already gotten there.
Yeah.
Just as a note,
He's beat me on balding, but I've beaten
yeah.
him on rounding.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know,
I'm
everybody has
trying
something
my
to
best.
contribute here at this committee.
All right, trying my best.
just as a note for that item, I was reminded by my colleague, that is a direct copy of the OMB shared service model. We're just trying to implement some of that
Great.
in OHR.
Thank you. Next, we have the, I think these probably can be dealt with together, paid parental leave program support and the director's office and the paid parental leave program support in OMS. These would be one position in each, so a total of two positions. Staff recommendation is a high priority. I will agree with that. Councilmember Katz will.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
This one's by bill, so I'm particularly sensitive to this issue. I will say, we did ask a number of questions of why there were two positions that needed to be hired when this bill happened. So the fiscal note was referenced here, but there was a little bit of pushback from the prior committee. I just think it's important to acknowledge of whether or not that was really necessary. So I do think it would be helpful for you to explain what each of these two positions will do, and also who's doing that work now, because this program launched last fall. I appreciate the department really stepped up here and implemented this in haste. I have given you credit and praise for that. I will continue to give you credit and praise for that. I think it's really important that the county move in this direction. Was proud to have sponsored this bill to make sure that we were leading by the power of our example as employers in county government. I do think this is a recruitment issue for working parents, of which we need to be recruiting better than we have been. But just wanted to see if you could help me better understand what these two positions are going to do and how that would change from how the work is happening currently.
Sir, I just want to thank you for your praise and encouragement, and we do need these positions. I really do appreciate it. So the leave can't be looked at just in a vacuum. These programs sort of pancake on each other. We've had twice as many requests for paid parental leave since the program started. The leave pancakes on top of each other. So a person, a parenting person would apply for FMLA as a job protection. FMLA can be paid with paid parental leave, or it can be paid with annual leave, or it can be paid with sick leave. Paid parental leave can be taken anytime through the first 12 months. They don't have to take all of that leave at once. So then the responsibility to monitor the leave and make sure that it's recorded correctly, that the benefits are not impacted, all of those things are why we need the multiple positions. It's that pancake effect that causes that for us.
And how many people have applied so far? You said it doubled, and who's doing that work now? Who's flipping the pancakes, I guess, is the question.
Well, lots of people.
That was for Councilmember Katz. That was a Katzian comment. I'm just trying my best to keep up.
Blame me for that.
I figured Mr. Katz's comment would have to do with the syrup, not the.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Very nice.
But
You won this one.
I do try. Let me just find the number. So there were 199 FMLA parental leave requests from January 1st through November 6th. From November 7th through March 28th, there were 346 additional ones. So the staff that we have, in addition to managing the regular FMLA leave without pay sorts of things, have sort of been overburdened, overstrapped, trying to make sure that the paid parental leave was processed. That's through any combination of overtime. Some things may be a tad delayed. There are a lot of retro fixes to make sure the records match up. It's those types of things that we've done.
Appreciate that. And how many people do we have currently overseeing any type of, all the types of leave who are obviously, you were saying, strained? Do we have any vacancies in any of those jobs or roles?
There are 3 jobs, and they're all filled.
3 jobs and all filled. Okay, I will go with the committee on this one. So you've convinced me. So there you go.
All right, so both of these, high priority, get put on the reconciliation list. Next, we have training and organizational development program support. This was in the repurpose of the unfunded DOT position that we were talking about before. I guess my one question is, do we have anyone doing this work now?
No.
No. Okay.
Training is really transactional. We post the list of trainings. We have staff that open up the classes. We monitor and track tuition reimbursement. There's not a singular position or role. We partner with Montgomery College to get some of our needs met, but we don't have anyone on staff that is a curriculum designer that's paying attention to the trends in our hiring needs and our growth. This is what I was attempting to explain, maybe inartfully, when we talked about the need for career paths and training sort of bound around the career paths to help people get prepared for the next step. This is a first foray into that. We have not made investments in training. We have not made investments really in staff. I know that there's concern about the rate of pay, but people come to work for a lot more reasons than just the pay. They come because they are given in public service. They come in because their work brings meaning. If we're not capitalizing on that and helping people grow in their professions, what have we done? We're doing exactly what Mr. Katz said. We're setting people up with excellent training so they can go someplace else and make meaning of their work.
So can I ask, because on the management and leadership training program that we talked about before, I see in the description that this one is broader than what we talked about before. But if I could ask you, if we actually took off the list completely the management and leadership training program, the 2 FTEs, and moved the training and organizational development programs to support to a high priority, could you accomplish maybe not all, but many of the goals that you've outlined today?
I could do some.
I'm okay.
I'm okay with that. So we would go back and actually strike the management and leadership training program, completely just take that off the list as a cut. And then Councilmember Katz and I would support the training and organizational development program support as a high priority.
Mr. Syrup, are you going to jump in?
That's better, but I would make it a priority because I just think when we're talking about direct services, which we're going to have to figure out a way to fund $65 million on the high priority list. I'm just not sure this meets that level for me, although I do appreciate the move by the committee. I would say that it should be a priority, not a high priority.
Mr. Howard, did you get all that?
So I've got the Management and Leadership Training Program, 325, 786, and 2 FTEs as just a reduction.
Yep.
And then the 112,001 FTE as a high priority under Training and Organizational Development Program Support.
Yep.
2 to 1.
Yeah, priority for me.
Priority, yes, sorry. Two for priority and 1 for priority.
We're going to make it up. All right. All right, next we have advertising, publications, and subscriptions. I think this kind of speaks for itself. It was a high priority recommendation from the staff. I think
Yes.
that works.
Yeah, just, I mean, how is this different from how we've advertised before? I mean, we already are doing this, it's just we're putting more money into this, or this is something that we've never done before?
We're not doing it consistently. What's happening now is if HHS decides that they need, our posting and praying is not working, they identify to us where they'd like to advertise, and then they have to cough up the money. I'm suggesting that we build capacity to do that in human resources. We shouldn't be asking departments for money to advertise their jobs.
And to do it more systematically.
Exactly.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
All right, I agree with the approach. I do think that we have to figure out, can I request something? And I'll go along with committee members. Could we get an analysis of all the money that has been spent by all of the committee, or all of the departments in aggregate? It doesn't have to be contingent on my vote here today. It doesn't have to come before this goes before the full council, but because this might take some time. But I think it would be helpful for us to understand, if we've been asking departments to do this within their existing resources, how much money has been spent over the last, say, 5 years, and what did it come out of? Because when we come back here next year, I would like for us to determine, did this work? Did this improve the process? Did this reduce the number of days that, vacancies were open or recruitments took? Did this get us a better completion? I'd like for that information as well. And the times where we use this, what impact did it have? So those are my 2 requests. Appreciate the indulgence of colleagues, and I will go along with this. I do agree that we have to fill the vacancies to do the work that people expect us and need us to do, and so I appreciate this.
The last is an employee recognition program. I at this point, agree with staff on the priority on this, and agree that I'm glad you brought this forward, but I think it goes into the whole bucket of the things that we talked about before that are going to be kind of difficult for us to fund this year. Councilmember Katz?
That's fine.
Agree. I think that's the end of your budget. I just want to say thank you very much. I very much appreciate the handout and helping us walk through this today. And I think, as my colleague said, we very much appreciate the wonderful job that you are doing in HR and understand the both the recruitment and retention issues that you are now facing. And we just thank you very much for your work.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for the blessing I have with my team.
Yeah.
They're very supportive and helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. The next item we have is Office of Labor Relations and Labor Management Relations Committee. Mr. Howard, you're on deck for this one as well. Oh, lots of folks. Mr. Howard, do you want to walk us through this?
Sure. This one, after the last one, this will be much shorter and sweeter.
We agree with that.
Challenge accepted.
Joined by Ms. Harling and Mr. Lacey, as well as Ms. Jackson. Again, so the Office of Labor Relations budget is $1.6 million recommended for FY24. It's actually a 0.1% decrease from FY23, just related to annualization of personnel costs and turnover savings. And the Labor Management Relations Committee non-departmental account is actually recommended for $0 in FY24 funding, which is a reduction from $100,000 last year. And the reason is it's a rollover fund, and it has sufficient funding from the prior years left over. OMB estimates that there is approximately $198,000 existing in the fund, which can, in that account, which can provide the duties and responsibilities needed to for that NDA. There is no significant vacancies for the Office of Labor Relations. They had one long-term vacancy that has just been either just been filled or is going to be filled in the next couple of days. And then in the Racial Equity and Social Justice Review, the OLR did get a rating of 0. So that may be a small discussion point that the committee wants to have.
Great. Any opening general remarks?
Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Jennifer Harley. I'm the Chief Labor Relations Officer, and joined by Mr. George Lacey, Labor Management Manager in our office. Just looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the only question I do have is on the racial equity and social justice score. If you could talk to us a little bit more about that.
Sure. As you're aware, we're a new office, and this year we were focused primarily on negotiating the 3 collective bargaining agreements, and we're also still in the process of negotiating the direct bargaining agreement with the volunteer firefighters. We are a tiny staff. We've had 5 in total the whole year. And so that's taken all of our time and effort. Also managing the Labor Management Relations Committees, which is has included establishing the countywide as well as establishing department level LMRCs, and included in that has been training. So we've incorporated training and all of that. So we did receive the question last week from council about how we evaluate or incorporate racial equity and social justice concepts into our approach to collective bargaining. It was an excellent question. I have reached out to Tiffany Ward in the Racial Equity and Social Justice Office to work with her staff and her team more on how we can incorporate those principles and concepts in our work going forward. Now that we have a little bit of a breath and we are bringing on some new staff, so I think that'll give us room to accomplish these bigger picture items.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. And we did hear from Ms. Ward when she came before us that she's working and her office is working directly with a number of the departments to get them up to speed. And we hope this time next year we'll see a different score. Council Vice President Friedson.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. I was going to ask about that, so I'm glad you did, as you always do. And so I really appreciate that. Obviously, we expect you to come back with a much higher score than 0. But appreciate the fact that you're beginning to work on that. It's obviously a priority of the councils. I know it's a priority of the executive branches, and we hope it'll be a priority of your offices. I would just like to understand the operating expenses. We're moving from the NDA to the office. The NDA had $100,000 in operating expenses that are being zeroed out, presumably because they're being absorbed by the office, and I just want to understand that better.
So just to clarify, and then I'll let executive branch staff talk as well. It's not being absorbed anywhere else. It's a rolling fund, the NDA, so the money stays in year after year, and so the existing appropriations from prior years are currently at $198,000. So the executive thought that there was not a need to put an additional $100,000 in here because it's unlikely they'll spend down the entire $200,000 that's already in the account. And
just could you explain the difference between the office's operating expenses and the NDA's operating expenses? I mean, is the NDA for bargaining and negotiating, and you have to pay for food for the negotiators and hotel conference rooms and.
Well, that's the OLR budget is separate from the LMRC fund, and certainly I'll defer to you on the specifics. But so the LMRC money is designated for LMRC activities only. So that would be the LMRC trainings, which have a cost because we have a trainer who comes. Anything associated, so it could be like food or beverages at those trainings. But also, when the committees meet, they may decide to agree on some kind of project that has a cost. So the funds for that project, and we haven't had one yet, which is why we have so much in the fund. It could be something like, looking into like heating and cooling of a building or something, and maybe these are the kinds of things that come up, or like recruiting efforts. It's just conversations. We're not talking about grievances. We're not negotiating anything, but we could work in partnership to address an issue of concern to employees, to the union, maybe to the county as well. And there may be a cost associated with that. So we could pull from the funds if needed to pay for whatever that is.
Shantae Jackson, Office of Management and Budget. The only other thing I would add is that the LMRC NDA, the funding of $100,000 for the LMRC is included in the collective bargaining agreement. So we are, trying to be in compliance with the provision that is in the agreement. And as Mr. Howard stated, we're just not adding an additional $100,000 because there is $198,000 there at this late in the fiscal year. The assumption is that the majority of that would be available in FY24 to roll over and be used in 24 for the activities that Ms. Harling explained.
Right. I guess my question is about the other 98,000. We're obligated to fund this at 100,000. Why doesn't the balance of that return to the general fund at the end?
Because the provision of the collective bargaining agreement states any monies not utilized will be rolled over to the next year. So that's how it got to be at 198.
Because that's what was negotiated
Because-
by the executive branch. Right. Okay. All right. Well, I think we should take a look at that next year. I think that is an area that we ought to take a look at, and I think we should be monitoring this we added 100,000 last year and we didn't spend it. We didn't need it. That's $100,000 that could have gone to a nonprofit. That's $100,000 that could have gone to one of the various important issues that we just talked about, and I think we should be mindful. So if we could at least note that for next year. I also think it would be helpful to understand how this money gets used and the differentiation between the operating expenses and the NDA and the operating expenses for this office. And so if we could get a detailed listing, maybe at the completion of the fiscal year of both, that would be helpful to me, because I do think it's important. Training and meeting space and others, I understand things cost money and we need to fund them, but I think we ought to know what we're budgeting for, and this is a fund that is pretty broad-based, and operating expenses is a very open-ended topic, and I think we ought to know what it is. So if you could come back to us near at the end of the fiscal year with a breakdown of operating expenses in the NDA, what's spent and what the balance is, and the expenditures over the course of the last year, and then the operating expenses of the office itself, how much is being spent on hotel rooms and meeting space and food and training. I think that would be helpful for us to at least be aware of. Thanks.
All right. I think that's it then. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it. And thank you for all your work on working with the unions this year. Appreciate it as well. All right. Now we're up to item number 4. Oh, no. Yes. Three. I'm sorry, I already moved my page. Item number 3, Department of General Services.
Well, I was going to say, we could skip.
I know. I moved my own.
Somehow you could get past that.
All right. We switched, Mr.
Changing of the guard.
Nice to see you. Do you want to, Director Dice, would you like to say anything before I have Mr. Mia walk through the staff package?
I think we can walk through the package. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay,
Happy
great.
to answer any questions and interject where I need to. Thank you.
All right, great. Mr. Mia?
Before we begin, if I could just request the chair to immediately go to items 5 and 6 after number 3, since they're all part of DGS.
Okay.
And then we can go to county attorney.
Yes.
Yes, what I'll do is I'll cover the print and mail internal service fund for DGS first, since that's pretty straightforward. It's an increase of $332,000, all of which is really related to required items such as annualization of 23 compensation, 24 compensation adjustments, motor pool adjustment. So really no issues there. It's a 4% total increase, and most of that increase is on the personal cost side. So staff recommendation is to approve the print and mail
Okay, wait.
budget.
Where'd you start?
Oh, sorry, yes.
You started on line 11. Is that correct? I'm on page 2 on your chart.
Sorry, I am on page 1, section A, subsection 1. The summary of staff recommendations.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mia. I don't know if
Yeah,
this was,
you just missed me.
I don't have a,
That's what he went through. He's not using
So,
He's just
Okay.
saying this is the summary.
yeah, I'll step back. There's
I think the first recommendation of the staff is the 11th recommendation of the staff chart.
chart.
that's correct, yes. There's some,
How about we just go through
In
the chart?
deference to the chair, it's extremely confusing.
let's go through the chart, yes. I've been doing this for many days now, so
I'm following both of you, but it's not easy.
not a problem.
We're going to blame Mr. Dice anyhow.
That's
No problem.
right.
No problem.
Let me step back. The DGS budget has two components, a general fund and a print and mail fund. I'll cover the print and mail fund first. If you look on page 3, table A2 up top, you'll see each of the items that are comprising the cost increases for the cost changes for FY24. As you'll see, items 1 through 6, the first 6 lines, these are all relatively straightforward increases or changes. Annualization of FY23 compensation, FY24 compensation. So staff is recommending inclusion of all of those components in the print and mail budget.
Yep. We're good.
Yeah.
Yep, no objection.
Excellent. If we step back now to table A1 on the prior page, we'll just go down the list as we did in the previous items for today. First, we'll cover items 1A and 1B, since those do go together. The county executive is recommending a shift of $2 million in operating expenses and fire to DGS, as well as recommending an addition of 5 new positions totaling $502,000 into the DGS general fund budget. This would create essentially shift a current function that's in fire and rescue to DGS for the maintenance of voluntarily operated owned fire stations, as well as creating a team that would also provide services and maintenance to county fire stations. This item was covered previously by the Public Safety Committee, as Chair Katz recognizes last week. That committee recommended these 2 items be added to the rec list as high priority. I've included some staff analysis by my colleague Susan Farag on pages 4 and 5. Essentially, from a cost perspective, it makes more sense to keep the function in fire and rescue for the time being for FY24. I will note that there are potential advantages of having this function be in DGS, which is typically the in-house expert on buildings maintenance. So all that's to say is council staff is recommending this be a priority on the rec list for FY24. And I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Cass, since you're Chair of Public Safety, would you like to speak to this item?
Well, I think that, and there was good discussion about it. Mr. Dice was certainly at our meeting as well, but we felt that for the time being, and I think you were in agreement, if my memory serves me correctly, that we should wait till next year. Is that?
No, I believe the committee voted 3-0 to support the executive's recommendation to undertake it in FY24. And the reason was, and I'm going to ask.
You're correct. Yeah, go ahead.
And
Yeah.
I'll ask my colleague from OMB to elaborate on this as well, but a number of reasons to do this. In the first place, the funding analysis ignores is it the ESPP fund?
Yes, it's the state Medicaid transport reimbursement that MCFRS is newly receiving.
That comes to the county, and it can be spent in any number of ways, but that offsets the initial difference here. Number 2, it says it does in fact return a current captain's position
exactly what it is.
back to fire and rescue to do the fire and rescue stuff. And it also provides, as Mr. Mia has already pointed out, the depth of resources and expertise available to the volunteers, which currently isn't available. And as a result, we'll also roll those facilities into a system that's mentioned later in this packet, our brand new systems, facility tracking and assessment. So it sort of envelops all county public facilities into the county portfolio and enables us to track, maintain, and operate them consistently across the portfolio.
Your memory is much better than mine. I absolutely agree with you. And one of the great concerns, as was mentioned, was the fact that we have a sworn firefighter who's doing this work now. And it makes sense to have that person return to the streets, as it were. So.
And this is Rachel Silverman with OMB. It's in fact a captain, which is one of the most expensive job classes in the county government. They get paid time and a half for overtime. And this would give us 5 frontline in the building resources to be doing the electrician, the plumbing, the craftsperson, the property management work that's currently lacking in the fire department to support these LFRD-owned facilities, so that they are treated and cared for in the same way that we care for the county buildings. And then, so when you take into account returning that captain to the field, the ESPP funding, year 2 of this initiative, once it's fully rolled out, is a $75,000 ongoing cost to the county. So we felt that was a good.
And it gets as nice and confusing as it possibly can, but we have buildings that are owned by the county. We have buildings that are owned by the volunteers. We have, we can start that list, and equipment, oh, by the way, which is a whole nother story.
And this essentially begins to treat them as if there is no difference.
Right.
But it does get a consistency. And by the way, those volunteer stations are staffed with full-time county staff as well. So there's a continuity of maintenance and operation that's very important. And the concern with the staff recommendation of this as being a priority item, quite candidly, a priority item is I could order the lilies tomorrow. And we're concerned that this be treated as a higher priority because we think the county and the residents of the county benefit greatly from it.
And I'm in agreement with that as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Appreciate a couple things. A little clarification, a couple things. One, not every volunteer facility is the same. Some have significant county resources, particularly weekday, daytime service. Many of those are covered by county fire rescue personnel.
Right.
And many are not. And some, it's all volunteer. Some is a combination of volunteer and career. So it just, it depends. So I just want to make sure, first of all, are we talking about all? Like this is going to be available to all? Because there have been issues in the past of how different organizations were treated under the county agreements based on legacy arrangements.
Right. So this would extend. So currently, all of those LFRD facilities are handled by MCFRS in terms of providing things like plumbing and HVAC and the inside facility repairs that are required. And those are by and large done by contract because MCFRS does not have civilian staff to do that work. Whereas all of the county-owned fire stations are handled by DGS staff, and they are staffed by, professional civilian crafts workers.
With 24-hour coverage.
And explain this to me for a second of why moving over a function from one department to another department for efficiency's sake, freeing up a captain because of the expense somehow costs us over, $2.5 million. It looked like over $500,000 for one part of this, and $2 million it looked like for the other part. Could you explain that to me?
Is just moving funds that currently exist in the MCFRS operating budget.
All right, so that's no net difference.
That's right. It's no net increase.
Right. It's the $500,000 that's the difference in fiscal 25.
So that doesn't have to go on the reconciliation list because it's a no net difference. It's just a change of one part of the budget to another. The $500,000, explain to me how cutting down on overtime for some of the most expensive personnel that we have that should be focused on saving lives and putting out fires and instead is overseeing a contract with electricians and plumbers
Right.
loses us money.
Okay, there is a captain detailed at MCFRS full-time right now to oversee facilities maintenance. And so that results in basically full-time overtime backfill for a position in the field. So by returning that captain to the field, we're saving $170,000 roughly in overtime for MCFRS. And in addition to that, MCFRS is having an increase in what we call ESPP funds, which is this new state Medicaid reimbursement vehicle. And so we are dedicating $253,000 of that bucket to support this enhancement so that we can, appropriately staff the facilities maintenance functions for this LFRD.
But we're getting the ESPP money no matter what. So, I mean,
That's correct. Yep.
I mean, that's not really a savings. We could allocate that to any
Yeah, you
function
could.
that we wanted. It's unrestricted
But the reason
in this
for doing
area.
The reason for doing it is because it rolls right back into the efficient operation of the fire and rescue system here in the maintenance of its facilities. As you'll see in another item where we want to increase our property managers, these are folks that are well beyond the industry standard for maintaining property. What we would do in this case is take all of those fire stations, volunteer and county, and roll them in under one property management team. It's a property manager with some support staff, craft workers, and
But basically, we haven't been maintaining these facilities, and now we're going to start, and that costs money.
what we've been doing with the county-owned facilities is rolling them into other zones, areas covered by the current property managers. This will put them all under one oversight and maintenance team, one response team.
Yeah, I understand. I still don't really understand why it costs so much more money to shift from one area to another area of county government and reduce the reliance on somebody who we consider to be overqualified, in terms of how much we're paying for this type of role. Like, we're paying a captain who is highly trained and highly specialized to put on hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, drive, millions of dollars of equipment, and go save people's lives. Thank goodness, and we don't want them to be overseeing building maintenance contracts, which I think we all agree with. I still don't, it's not clear to me where the cost difference is and why it costs more money. It doesn't really cost $75,000 more. It costs like $253,000 plus.
Well, if you look at the top of page 5, it lists the positions. It's a property manager, craft worker, HVAC mechanic, plumber, and electrician. This is our typical property management team.
So how much are we paying on the contracts currently within MCFRS to carry out the work that those 5 people are now going to carry out at DGS?
So the $2 million that is shifted from MCFRS to DGS is the cost that MCFRS currently has budgeted to support that work. And we may be able to do some more preventative maintenance in those facilities. So you can't, it's very difficult to say, there's going to be precisely X savings.
But you understand what I'm asking? I mean, why wouldn't the $2 million cover the 5 people?
Well, that may be one end result of this, right? Because we will have in-staff employees doing a lot of work that had previously been done by contract.
Contractually,
But I think it would be.
Can I be clear?
I don't think, Councilmember Friedson, I don't think the math has been done to that level of precision. In other words, it's $2 million of contract expenses. It's $500,000 worth of new staff time. I'm reasonably confident there's a wash in there, but I don't think that analysis has been done.
Well, my view is the $2 million is more than adequate to cover all of the costs, and that's what we should be
I would
approving.
agree with that.
And you will cover with contracts until you have staffed. And as you staff up, you will cut the contracts.
Correct.
And you will move those responsibilities over to staff because, of course, continuity of maintenance is something that you're going to strive to provide, which we all appreciate. So I appreciate where you're coming from, but that level of math has to have happened because we have to approve a budget here of taxpayer dollars. So I think that needs to be fleshed out. I mean, I'm comfortable with the move and to prioritize it, but it can all be done within that $2 million.
We think so, yes.
So
So then we should be striking.
I don't think it needs to even be on the reconciliation list then, if
Staff
it's within
would agree
existing
with the shift of
resources.
$2 million as a direct approval. It's the additional positions where, the analysis we've shown on page 5 shows an upfront FY24 cost impact with perhaps eventual long-term savings, but we haven't done that long-term analysis. So resulting from the overtime savings. So the $2 million shift, I think staff has no issue with shifting that. That would be sensible. It's the new positions that are being requested. And those positions, if they were approved, would take 6 months to fill. So DGS would still
I
be
think
relying
that's the
on.
point to Councilman, Vice President Friedson's point. It's just going to take a while as we recruit for those positions. As you've pointed out, we back down on contractual support. And to the extent that we can backfill until that time, we'll do that. But the point is that we've identified the resources from where those savings will come. It's just a matter how quickly we fill these positions.
And council staff also notes the HVAC mechanic 2 and the electrician 2, which seem to be similar functions, are currently vacant. Could those cover some of
We
those?
are actually, we've already, in fact, for one of those positions, for the HVAC mechanic, we're interviewing 5 applicants now. As you heard in the OHR discussion, our real challenge in trades is keeping them. We get guys that'll come in and be interviewed, like the job, and then when it comes to salary, they say no thanks because we're not competitive, and that's a real challenge. We do get some folks, and those when we mine the field, we're trying to get people who are interested in careers, and in some cases, we're often getting older experience, which we love actually. The experienced folks are tired of traveling all over metropolitan DC and Baltimore and Richmond corridor in order to do work, and they like the settledness, and those are the folks we tend to attract. But it's recruiting for these positions, just like our auto mechanics, is challenging. So yes, we've got 5 applicants we're interviewing now for HVAC, and in the electric position, we're going to convert that into a team lead. So yes, those are all active in recruitments, but it's a challenge. And until that time, we'll have to supplement with contractual support.
Yeah, $2 million is a lot of money for 5 positions. I think
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
more than adequate. So there's 3 approaches here. One is to move it over, continue with the existing contracts that will be managed and overseen by DGS, and slowly recruit for positions, which we could decide on. Number 2 is to take 1 more year to have DGS oversee the contracts and then come back when you really understand what the staff you would need and continue on the contract for the year. And I don't think you need $2 million to do this work.
I don't think that year buys you anything, because we're talking about doing that transition right out of the gate. So I think we have additional resources that we can infill, some additional contract resources that we can infill. The $2 million that Fire and Rescue pays for this, I can't tell you exactly what they get out of.
Could I make a recommendation? Do you think $1 million would cover more than cover?
Well, that's speculating, and I hate to do that.
My personal view would say approve the 5 positions and the $500,000 associated with that, and $1 million instead of $2 million. We'd find savings, which is the whole purpose of this, and I think would be a lot easier for us to get approved in a very difficult budget environment, which actually makes the case for why we're moving. You understand what you're asking us. You came to the council in this budget and you said, we want to move one function from one department to another department for efficiency's sake that will cost you more money, which is a very bad argument, just a horrifically bad argument. As opposed to saying we want to move from one department to another department for cost savings and recruit and actually save money. And so if colleagues are interested, if we did $1 million plus the 5 new positions, these positions would be created in order to reduce the reliance on a captain and overtime, which is unreasonable and makes little sense, and on contractors, which we're increasingly trying to do in all these discussions, is figure out what are we paying more than we need to in contractors where we could be focusing on county employees.
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, no, that you're not adding $2 million, you're just moving $2 million.
I mean, why, I think that the I think we will definitely be saving contractual costs. The challenge is that these are the oldest facilities really almost in the entire county portfolio, and they have significant needs. And so if we were to go with a option like that, we may be setting ourselves up for a structural deficit in future years.
Budget already does that.
Heck,
that we're not overseeing at this point. We don't know, though they certainly are in good repair as far as we know. We don't know as how good a repair they really are in. I mean, where that money's coming from and who's overseeing
we've
it.
actually done some preliminary work, but I think it's a fair comment that to credit fire and rescue and the volunteers, it's not like these places are all leaning 15 degrees. But we'll go in and do a detailed analysis, and we'll incorporate, as I said, into our new facility assessment system, for which we're asking a position to maintain, and so those will be better, most assuredly better maintained into the future.
Go ahead.
On the other hand, if I may, Madam Chair, respecting Vice President Friedson's observance and the committee's wisdom, if that is an approach that you believe better assures support from the council, I've taken on better challenges than that in previous budget years. So
I appreciate that. At the very least, and I'm willing to slightly, try to find a compromise here. I'm willing to do that from time to time, I promise. It's totally unreasonable to me to spend more money to do this. It defies logic. But I understand if it doesn't create a cost savings immediately, and we want to give ourselves a cushion. So the $2 million, I think, should cover the $502,000 in it. So we could, add the 5 positions, and then you'll come back to us and understand what the ongoing expense would be. The annualized cost of those 5 positions is a little over $600,000. The question would be, can you do the rest of the work in 1.3 or 4 million? And I think you can, but you'll have an opportunity to demonstrate that.
All right. So then we're actually then cutting, we're keeping the 5 positions, but cutting the $502,000 for that and shifting the $2 million over.
Net impact $2 million being added.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. Well, we got 500,000.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty
You've done
good.
good on that. Sort of. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Now it's, yeah. Yes, I would make that a high.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes,
That was very
absolutely.
smooth on
Yes.
your part.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Dice. Yes, that is a high priority.
Very, very smooth. Yeah.
That would be a high priority. Don't worry, when it
the
comes to full
highest
council, we'll. All right. Mr. Mia, we are on now, going down to 2A and 2B, and I don't know if you want to include
Yes.
2C in that.
Yes, and I forgive my typos on this 2Cs. 2A, 2B, all the 2 items are submitted as part of a package by DGS and OMB. The net, it's a net cost neutral if you take them all together. I've broken up 2A and 2B as high priority. 2A is adding a property manager to essentially create, there are currently 7, as Dr. Dice mentioned, 7 geographic areas that property managers cover in DGS. This would be adding another property manager to create an 8th geographic area / team. The cost of this position would be partially offset by 2B, which is a $87,000 savings in a plumbing contract. The idea is you have on staff doing more of the work, you can reduce contractors. So for both 2A and 2B, I am recommending as high priority, although it is cost neutral. The committee could choose to approve it since it's cost neutral, slightly cost neutral. No, this recommending is high priority. I'll backtrack. I'll backtrack as high priority. 2C is adding an admin specialist to position to support the new capital asset management system that DGS is implementing. The position would be doing tracking, data analysis, and things like that. And then 2D is abolishing 2 vacant positions and reducing by 2 FTEs. So again, all the 2 items together collectively are cost neutral.
Sorry, I was
it's okay.
saving you, Mr. Mia.
She helped you by adding 2C in there.
This is a complicated budget that I'm used to with DGS, but
Yeah.
So bottom line, 2A and 2B, staff is recommending as high priority. 2C I'm recommending as priority, and 2D I'm recommending as approve, just taking that reduction.
Yeah, if we can change that to a high priority. Basically, if you take the positions, if you take the position we've added and the others in Mr. Mia's packet on page 7 regarding the admin specialist, and I'm speaking in favor of this because this new capital asset management system is going to turn us around. As I've often said, we don't know what we don't know, and what I don't know terrifies me. This new asset management system is going to fill us with knowledge of our infrastructure, and just as forewarning, probably going to mean we're going to know that we got to replace a lot of our plant that we don't currently realize. But I need someone who will sit on this program and know it better than they know their own name. That's why this position is so important. And in Mr. Mia's recommendation, he recommends that we go and identify vacant positions and find them within DGS, which is precisely what we've done in 2D. So that is doing that. So if we take the additions that are represented here, about $220,000, and annualize the abolish creates into these other positions, it's a $3,600 difference. So it's about as close to zero as we can get without being at zero.
And Director Dice, do you have any dedicated staff right now for the capital asset management?
I have none. To be honest, in order to purchase and develop this system, we cobbled money from all over the place. All of our PLAR and other level of effort projects, we took some funds there. It was $1 million to purchase the software. And it's all related to those things. It's not like we were stealing funds from the DGS picnic fund or anything like that. But we cobbled together the funds to do the software, and it's ready to go. I have facility staff that are working on this and building it, but no one to actually run it.
I think the suggestion of, I would recommend moving this to a high priority. So what we have on the table now is 2A, 2B, 2C as high priorities, and 2D is approve. All okay?
We're okay.
Good?
Yeah.
Yep, we're good with that.
So
All right.
accept the cuts and move this high priority.
Mr. Dice, I think it's fair to say there's times that I'm concerned about what you do know, so anyhow.
I am too.
All right, I know. Better we know what it is. All right, line 3.
Okay, line 3 is line 3 and 7, and are both related. They're contractual cost increases for maintenance services. Again, these are essential functions of DGS, so I'm recommending both as high priority. I'll note on the custodial contract, the base budget includes $7.5 million, so a $1.2 million is about a 17% increase. That is partly due to inflation, but I will also note that, these budgets are historically under budgeted, which is why you have such a large double-digit percentage increase for 24. That's less of an issue with the groundskeeping, the fire extinguishing, and the electrical controls contracts, but with custodial services, that's why it's such a large double-digit increase.
Contract costs are going up
Yep.
everywhere.
Great. Any questions on that?
Good.
Nope, we're good on that. And then I think we need to discuss 5, is that correct?
Number 8, Neville Street.
All right, we have to approve the
Oh.
increased cost annualization of, oh, no,
We don't have a
no,
choice.
sorry, we don't have a choice.
Yeah, those are all.
Sorry, we are, right, we moved down to 8. Yep.
Yes, the only other two more items for decision. Number 8 is the Neville Street Emergency Shelter. Again, that's That was constructed by DGS. The initial maintenance operations was conducted by the nonprofit. For FY24, DGS has already taken over the maintenance of it.
Well, the agreement with MCCH would be that, as they were doing with other facilities, that they would maintain this one. This is a little bit beyond their capabilities. Their facility manager, they've really tried hard. I'm going to give them a lot of props, but it's a bit beyond them. I've had staff over there doing maintenance already. So it could not function without the level of support that we give it. So this is just recognizing reality.
Good.
We have no choice.
Nope, we're good on that.
And then number 10 is the 3% inflationary adjustments consistent with other budgets where staff is recommending that as high priority.
All right, we're good with that. I think you're good. And Director Douglas did excellent work on your racial equity and social justice score. Was glad to see you
Tried
at
very
3. I very much appreciate that work and look forward to continuing
Great.
working together.
He
All right.
wants to go to 5.
I think
All right, you're still with us, right? 5 and 6.
warm in the chair.
Yep, just
5 and
stay
6.
here. All right. Mr. Mia, you're up.
Under the
5
watchful
and
eye of the county attorney, mind.
You know, it's nice to have them wait for me.
Believe me, you'll pay for that dice.
5 and 6 are in one packet. Item number 6 is state aid for MCPS playgrounds. The state assembly has provided $1.3 million FY24. It is already $1.3 in 23. Staff is recommending approval. State aid, no controversies. I think the only we'll have to come back and identify which schools will actually get the playgrounds, but that has not been.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the process of working with schools on that, as well as the classrooms.
We got them all. We just figured them out.
The other amendment is the ADA compliance project. This was submitted for amendment in January. The CES has submitted a second amendment in March, reflecting another $1 million of prior year savings in GO bonds, as well as shifting $500,000 from FY25 to 26 to essentially help balance the CIP. Again, no issues. Staff is recommending approval.
We're good.
Okay.
All right, now you're done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next we're off to the Office of the County Attorney. All right,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon. Any opening remarks you would like to make, or?
No, you've got a busy schedule, and we're in the middle of it, so I'll defer to council staff and answer any questions you have.
Great. Mr. Mia?
A pretty straightforward budget for this year for county attorney. Main cost increases, again, in personnel, which is what we've seen in other budgets as well. Again, driven by FY23 annualization of personnel costs, as well as FY24 compensation adjustments. The only item the committee could make a decision on is number 1 on the chart. It's essentially, there's a cost increase of $354,000 and 1.8 FTEs. This is recognizing current county attorneys who have been previously charging to the CIP on certain projects. Those projects have closed, so now they're returning home to the general fund, and so staff is recommending approval of that. Okay. And then I only note on as something two other things to monitor. One is the use of outside counsel. We know that after the pandemic, there was a sharp increase in outside counsel costs as county attorney was catching up on backlogs. So far for FY23, this current year, that cost has been normalizing to pre-pandemic levels. So just wanted to make that a note. We'll monitor it, but really no issues at this point. And then I'll just mention the Office of ResJ score was 0. Mr. Markovs can speak more on that in terms of how the score was developed with the Office of ResJ and what improvements it can be.
Yep. Yes, that would be awesome to.
Sure. So, Office of County Attorney, I just learned about that rating last week when the packet dropped. Frankly, I think it's a misunderstanding of the role of the county attorney's office, and maybe as an internal department, we don't get ranked correctly. The Office of the County Attorney represents the county council and the county executive and the executive branch, and for decades, we have been supporting all of the policies and programs of racial equity and social justice. In fact, the irony should not be lost that we helped draft the legislation for that office and the regulations. Historically, we've always had a very racial equity and social justice approach towards everything, and I've got a number of examples, which I don't understand why my comments to the original budget submission were not included in here, and we got the score 0, because we don't implement policies and programs that you and the county executive support. We enforce them. And the county attorney's office is not like an AG's office prosecuting criminal and civil cases regularly, except for a few exceptions, which I'll point out. For instance, we still have our ongoing FHA predatory lending case against Wells Fargo and Bank of America for race-based changes in loan documents, predatory lending. That case is still going on. We've been fighting it for a number of years now. As Councilmember Katz will recall, during his tenure as president, we had the EARP, Emergency Assistance Relief Payment, lawsuit in which the county attorney's office successfully defended in federal court, both in district court and the Fourth Circuit, the use of $12 million of EARP money for residents to feed their families and for affordable housing. We were sued by Judicial Watch. We beat off that lawsuit. And were successful in allowing non-documented non-residents to get about $12 million from the county that the county council saw fit to appropriate. Again, if that isn't racial equity and social justice, I don't know what is. We prosecute housing code violations regularly, and in fact, the county executive, post-COVID, as we were rolling into the end of COVID, it became apparent that we needed a more robust approach by the executive branch to go after the code violations, and sure enough, DHCA increased those inspections, and as a result, my office increased processing of citations, and we do about 1,700 a year. Just in,
Mr. Market, you don't need to go through. I appreciate the.
I was not pleased that I was not consulted with what went into the packet for that. But at the end of the day, I think the council knows that the county attorney's office is here to enforce the laws and to go after. We also do. I will drop this, that Office of Human Rights has sent prosecutions over to us, and we prosecute those through OZA. So, again, same thing for consumer protection. So we're kind of a back end. I mean, we punch above our weight class, I think, sometimes for the size of our office, but we cover all of the county's needs in those regards. I got cases, too, if you want to.
Right. No, that's good. I appreciate that. And, when Ms. Ward was here, we did talk about her and her office working more, particularly with some of the more internal-facing departments, to make sure that as they're answering the questions, it makes sense moving forward.
If you want to give me more money to set up another division for affirmative litigation beyond the stuff that I was going to point out today, I mean, just the opioid case, which affects everybody in the county. In the past year, I've resolved in those litigation $51 million over 18 years, between 6 and 13, and then the rest with the opioid distributors is going to be about $51 million just right now. That doesn't include CVS, which the state of Maryland hasn't joined yet in that national settlement. That'll bring us another $5 million. I just settled, and you saw the other day, the Monsanto PCB environmental litigation that, again, affects everybody. That's $4.3 million to our back pocket. We're looking at other affirmative litigation, about the Meta and Facebook cases that we're looking at, and possibly a climate change lawsuit. So, again, but if you want to give me money for affirmative prosecutions, I'd entertain another division.
No, I think we're good on that. Any of my colleagues have any other questions?
Just a quick question. Yeah, appreciate your answer to that. Appreciate it being raised. Appreciate the opportunity that you've had to address it. I think there are some improvements to the office and its relationship, particularly to the inside, county serving, not external departments like yours, as the chair noted. I did separately on the staffing. There's one vacancy for an administrative aide that's been open for over 3 years, and one for a finance and procurement paralegal that's been open for almost 5 years.
Which is the one we're giving up as part of, taking one for the team.
Right.
Giving up that paralegal specialist position was actually, it's interesting, and I'll point it out just so you're aware of the issue. We actually recruited 3 times during COVID and post-COVID for that position, and could not find a candidate that would accept the salary from a pay equity standpoint in my office. And as a result, to Department Head Anderson, Tracy did a great job of responding to my paralegal dilemma, which was I had three paralegals, females, who I thought were underpaid, and I asked her to do a compensation survey, and we've adjusted the salaries for the three existing paralegals to bring them to match other paralegals in my office. That paralegal specialist was a person who got hired by HHS, and we were unable to fill it, and then COVID hit. The admin aide, that's an interesting one because it was always a full-time position, but it's like a grade 13, I think. I think that's right, or 12? I think 13. And so it's a fairly low-paying position in the office. We've had a great deal of difficulty recruiting for that, so we've used temporary services for it. This is a person who scans for archive purposes. We have to keep track of certain documents and archive them through the state archivist requirements. So this person scans pretty much all of our closed files.
And is the plan for that you're going to continue just using?
Well, there's always the Fair Labor Standards Act issue, right? Which is if you use a contractor too much, are they really an employee? I mean, right now we've used it. I think we've gotten to the point now where we think this should be back to an employee again in the office, and that's why it's on the ask list.
Do you intend to fill this?
We intend to fill it, yes. And there's there may be somebody who's with disability could be hired. We have to look at what our hiring options are for that position at that grade level too. There's lots of
Well, if you could keep us posted on what you decide to do with that position and how you decide to handle it. It's been vacant for a while. We understand there have been some challenges and appreciate the way that you've approached the paralegal work and addressing the problem, but also giving some too. You know, if you want to address the problem on one end, you have to, give some on the other end too. And I appreciate the willingness of you and the department to do that.
Paralegal specialist was going to actually take over in ESI, electronically stored information, to support one of the lawyers to deal with all the MPIA requests and electronically stored information. The Canaan case, which we successfully won last year, which was the stormwater category change, there was tons of discovery. I mean, I'm talking a terabyte of data that was digital. So handling all that is really hard right now. Plus, if you have a lawyer do it, you're using up time that otherwise could be used for court.
For the record, I don't know what a terabyte is, but it's a lot.
A lot more than gigabytes.
It's way beyond what I can count. So I'll yield back.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, Mr. Marcos, that Montgomery County has been very, very fortunate over the many years, and I know you've been associated with the county, with the office as well, but it's been so very well served. And you come from a long tradition of having some extremely fine county attorneys. And I just wanted to very publicly say that you are keeping that tradition very much alive, and we sincerely appreciate your service.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind thoughts.
Great. I think that's it for you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And our last item today is looking at our, the Office of Grants Management. And just as a reminder for my colleagues, we're going to start the conversation today and not make any decisions until our meeting again on Friday. Great. All right. You take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, esteemed council members. My name is Rafael Pomerlejo Murphy. I'm the director of the Office of Grants Management. I'm joined today by my colleagues, OGM colleagues, Emily Daniluk and Ali Hoy, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Carolyn Chen for her support in establishing the Office of Grants Management and her continued engagement. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak on the County Executive's FY24 recommended budget as it relates to Office of Grants Management, cost-sharing capital grants, and the Community Grants non-departmental account. OGM is a new entity in county government, only being established this fiscal year, and relatively unique in that the county's racial equity and social justice goals have been built into our founding legislation. Our four principal goals are to increase the volume of outside dollars received by the county, improve distribution of county grants to our partners, integrate Res-J considerations to all grants management activities, and provide greater transparency in all the grants given and received by the county. To achieve the first goal, OGM supports MCG departments in leveraging federal, state, and private grants as a strategy to extend department's ability to deliver county programs and services. Our strategy boils down to a concept we call grants ready. We help departments be ready to successfully attack grants opportunities as soon as they post and be ready to effectively manage outside grant funds that we receive. Some departments are already very effective at bringing in outside resources, while others will need significant support. To achieve our second goal, OGM has the considerable task of both reforming and creating a grant funding mechanism for the county. Our goal is to provide departments with a more equitable, efficient, and appropriate mechanism for providing certain partners with funding in a more complex manner, or a more flexible manner, instead of the restrictive reimbursable procurement contracts they currently use. Every week, OGM finds new grants opportunities reserved or prioritized for nonprofits. In partnership with other capacity-building organizations, OGM's strategy is to use our competitive grants programs to prepare our nonprofits for bigger and better funding opportunities outside of the county. The CE's FY24 recommended budget includes additional positions to meet the expected demand for outgoing grant programs, deliver these programs with equity, build the capacity of our applicants, and provide appropriate oversight. Almost 4 years ago, the county and nonprofit community recognized our historic community grants process was fundamentally flawed and that we should move towards a new system built around the county's equity goals. A summary of the reform process, the consensus recommended outcomes, additional outreach from OGM, and when we achieved each outcome are summarized in Circle 6 of your packet. The FY24 CE recommended budget for the community grants NDA and cost-sharing capital grants represents a culmination of this multi-year effort. Nonprofit Montgomery and other nonprofit leaders have been deeply involved in these discussions and have expressed support for these reforms. They're some degree complex, so I look forward to your questions.
Great. Anyone else? Nope, we're good. I think maybe we will start off today by just asking some questions about how things are going and the plans moving forward before getting into the specific budget items. So I'll start out, and I know this is something that's been in the works for a while, but folks I know have some of the organizations being funded through community grants have expressed some concerns moving forward, since this is the last year, as you said. And if you could just go a little bit more in depth in terms of the timeline and what's going to be happening over the next 6 months for a year, and what outreach has been made to the nonprofits that will be affected.
So I think it's appropriate to back up all the way to 2018-19, which is when the Office of Legislative Oversight issued their report on community grants. That was really the founding piece that started a whole series of engagements, and it was focused on the county council grants process because these used to be split, but that rolled into the county executive grants and just a broad discussion of how to do grants better. That was those conversations and a series of focus groups within internal MCG stakeholders came up with 6 recommendations. These were vetted in 2019 with the nonprofit community through a series of workshops organized by Nonprofit Montgomery. There were some other ones on the side as well. And we reached consensus, internal and external stakeholders, on 6 recommendations. Those are on Circle 6 of your packet. You can see those there. Part of it was the establishment of the Office of Grants Management. Part of it was using grants, a real grants agreement, as opposed to this procurement contract, which we've been using for years. And then there are a number of other ones which you can see. But one of them was the big one, and the most complex one, was community grants process should shift to becoming outcomes driven. I was part of those conversations. I was in the Office Management budget at the time. And that one was really, everyone agreed that it needed to be reformed, but we never dove into the details, and because the pandemic hit. And so all of those conversations, which lasted through the FY21 budget process, once the FY21 budget process was released, the pandemic had hit, we shifted to bigger and better problems that we needed to address. So that was tabled. The creation of OGM was tabled. The legislation had already been posted. It was delayed because of the pandemic. That was passed a couple years ago. It went into effect this summer. So with the creation of my office, and I was appointed about a year ago, we began to restart those conversations of, okay, what specifically should the community grants process look like? What specifically, do you want change? What could be changed? What should be changed? And so it began with a series of more informal or focused kind of meetings with nonprofit community. With myself, I went back to the 2019 notes, the 2018 OLL report, various other resources being put out there. Considered looking at a nonprofit advisory council, developing that, met with a large number of stakeholders in terms of whether to create that, how that should look. Again, always with the focus on how should we reform community grants. There were some delays in getting my staff on board, and so it was a one-person show for a long time. But really where I ended with, it was really difficult to come up with an equitable structure for a nonprofit advisory council. You're going to leave some people out. So I opted to go for a survey to the nonprofit community. That was early January to mid-February. It was open, marketed it, launched it with Nonprofit Montgomery on January 4th in their one of their forums. That video is still posted now. You can see the launch of that survey. And the goal of that was, there were a number of questions related to grants reform, but the one that I led with was, how do you think community grants should be reformed? So nonprofits were able to put in their perspective. I had a number of kind of like focus group or meeting groups, letting people talk about that, help them clarify what we're asking for. Downloaded all that. 200 organizations submitted responses, went through their responses, teed up options for the county executive of, well, this is the patterns, this is what we're looking at, this is what organizations are saying in terms of how they would like the community grants to be. And so the county executive made his decisions. Those have been integrated in FY24 budget in terms of really returning this to just a competitive process. It used to be a competitive process pre-pandemic. Things were frozen during the pandemic. And so we're just returning what it used to be. There are some strategic changes to it in terms of the money. It was always very loosely defined. You could have small business programs, you could have food security programs, you could have youth programs, you could have senior programs. There's no definition to the community grants NDA. It could be any type of program. That made it very difficult to select winners. It made it difficult to prioritize because that's really a value judgment. What committee, you're going to have bias one way or the other. So part of another recommendation within this process was, move certain things out of the community grants NDA into base budgets. And so we found that there was a lot of programs that were being jointly funded, like the same program, half their money was coming from the department base budget, half their money was coming from the community grants NDA. And you had a completely different process for whether you got your department money and whether you got the community grants money. And so it led to a lot of headaches with the nonprofit partners. They didn't like it. And it led to a lot of headaches with the departments because they didn't like it as well. It didn't really serve anybody. So over the last 4 fiscal years, and this is outlined in the packet as well, we've been shifting blocks of money from the NDA into departments where it's aligned with their strategic mission. So the question is, what do we do with the money that we have left that doesn't really align with what the departments are doing? That doesn't mean they're bad, and I think that's a misconception in the nonprofit community, is because it's left in the community NDA, it's less valuable or less important. There's a wide range of programs that are good, they're serving our community, they just don't neatly fit into the county stovepipes. So a lot of these programs, if you go through them one by one, you can see it's about $1 million for academic support, things that probably MCPS should be overseeing. But they're funded, they're doing a good job. There might be a strategic value to having that, us be supporting programs like that, not just MCPS. You've got a lot of programs that really probably should fall under WorkSource Montgomery, or programs that are related to youth that are close to what Collaboration Council does. So it's, what's left over are things that just don't neatly fit. And that doesn't speak to the lack of value for those programs. It just speaks to a lot of our community needs don't neatly fit into a stovepipe. And there should, in the county executive strategy is, there should be a strategic place for those programs to belong in the budget, a process for them. If you want to do additional food security, put that in the Office of Food System Resilience. If you want to do additional abortion access programs, put that in HHS. It's an appropriate place to go. The community grants is going to be a place where, opportunities, strategic programs, things that don't neatly fit into a stovepipe. And so that was the process that we, in very, very abbreviated format, that's a process we went through to reach what's in the county executive's recommended budget.
Great. Any other general questions before we get into?
Well, yeah, about the process, you mean? Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I've been here for a lot of these conversations, perhaps not all of them. I have frequently expressed some concern about how this process would work and whether we were setting ourselves up to actually do what we said we were going to do. We didn't predict a pandemic. I didn't predict a pandemic, but many of these issues were not because of the pandemic, although they were exacerbated and made infinitely more challenging because of the pandemic. And unfortunately, some of these challenges have caused this ongoing delay and holding pattern. But I do appreciate the work that you have done and this nascent office setting itself up to continue to do. I really do think we have to move forward and control what we can control and over communicate what we can't control. And I think we have not always done that in this regard. We've sometimes provided conflicting messages to our nonprofit partners, and I'm hoping that this is the beginning of kind of changing that as we move forward. And I'll note that this entire process, reminds me of so many things in local government that the only thing that people dislike more than the way things are is change. And this is a dramatic change to the process, and it is disruptive. And we have struggled to navigate this change and just acknowledge that there will be growing pains to do it, and we are making choices, and those choices have consequences. And at a certain point, we just got to choose what consequences are we willing to accept and what are we not willing to accept, and how do we make decisions related to them, while we recognize that our nonprofit partners are as important as they've ever been, maybe more important than they've ever been, to providing the type of social safety net that we do in county government. So I just wanted to note that. I have specific questions about specific aspects of the recommendation that I'll hold off on until we get to those points. But the overarching question of moving to the base budget, I just want to acknowledge I am a little bit concerned about the process of allowing departments exclusively to determine what goes into their base budget and what doesn't. Because there are times when there are turf wars between county government providing services and nonprofits providing similar services, and a determination of who does it better and how it should be done, and whether it should be contracted out to a nonprofit at all or whether it should be done internally. And we see that in early child care. This is an ongoing back and forth issue that we have faced and will continue to face from my perspective. And I think at times we don't acknowledge the 800-pound gorilla in the room, that there are challenges there that we need to work through. And I do think that those are the type of situations where the council should have a role in. So I don't know how we fix that part of it for this particular aspect, but the original thought process was to do an analysis of what services fit into the base budget, not necessarily allowing departments, at least from my perspective, to pick and choose which contracts they wanted to take on and which ones they didn't want to take on. But it was more of a span of control question and an appropriateness question of, is this really a county government service that naturally fits neatly into a department, and therefore it should be funded in the base budget? And I believe when we initially had those conversations, it was going to be a more objective question. And what it has become, from my perspective at least what it appears, is quite a subjective question, that the department has determined which ones they want to take and which ones they don't. And that's basically determined by the department's interest level or willingness to take on that particular area. And I think that's something that we should be exploring as we move forward. And I don't know if that should be the grant office's job to determine that. I don't know if that should be the CAO and the second floor's job to determine that. I don't know if that should be, identifying the kind of question areas and coming back to this committee with, here are the judgment calls and what is the will of the council for these types of services. Because the other aspect of the base budget move, it was intended that the base budget moves were not for particular nonprofits, although, of course, they are being serviced currently by a specific nonprofit to provide a particular service. The idea was whether or not the service was a base budget service, and therefore those would be handled as a base budget contract, whether they're a for-profit company and they were through the procurement office in a private sector recruitment, or whether they were a service to a nonprofit. And I think somehow in the course of the pandemic and the iterations of this process, that has changed, because when we originally talked about it, there were positives and negatives to moving into the base budget. On the one hand, you wouldn't be part of the grants process. On the other hand, if you're in the base budget, the service is in the base budget, but you'd have to bid and compete to provide those services. And if another nonprofit or another entity or organization came in and had another approach, the department would be able to procure through the regular procurement processes through that service. So could you just share a little bit about your view of that process and whether you have a similar view of what was the intention and whether or not we've met that intention, or whether you have a difference of opinion of whether I had thought about this differently than the executive branch had thought about this all along?
In general, everything you've said is consistent with the intent of this process was, and I remember again, 2019, making Josh Waters, the Deputy Director of OMB, who was leading these groups, these focus group, made it very, very clear to the nonprofits as we were discussing this is we are shifting the service. We are not shifting you forever. So this is the service. If it gets bid out, it gets won by somebody else. It's not a permanence of funding. Throughout my engagement with this, and I think I've been through this through the beginning, at least since my employment with the county, that's always been the consistent message, is that the service is shifting. We are consolidating services. We are consolidating funds to make better strategic decisions and how different things are used. There's been a few occasions where maybe the department didn't recommend something, but OMB or OGM now made a recommendation and those have been carried in. So for example, last year there's a strategic decision to take all the legal services grants, all the legal services contracts, and shift them from HHS and maybe some other places into CEC, the Community Engagement Cluster, for them to be managed there. Community grants were missed. There were a couple of ones providing legal services, and so that gets to kind of the strategic disconnect where departments are having one conversation about funding, and then community grants is sitting out here, doing its thing. So this year we made the recommendation, or OGM made the recommendation to push those into CEC as well. There's no point. The goal was to consolidate these services. We're going to consolidate these services, including the ones in the community.
You mean legal services like for tenants? Like
no, for immigrants.
Protection?
Sorry.
Or for immigrants?
Specifically for immigrants. I apologize. So that's always been
We provide
consistent.
funding for both. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, I apologize for
no
the
problem.
clarity. I think the myth that I've been fighting against, and I think anyone deeply involved with this has been fighting against at the beginning, is there's a myth that once you get into the base, you're permanent. Your organization is always going to get money. And we've been pushing against this perception throughout the nonprofit community that going into the base budget guarantees you permanence of funding. No, that money is going to a service. If your department has to take a cut, they could cut your program. If your department decides to rebid this funding or consolidate programs from different partners into one, that's going to be their discretion or it's going to be part of their budget process. It's not going to go through the community grants and their process.
Can I say
Yeah,
something?
no, sure. I just have one request, and
I
I'll
just
turn
wanna
back to you on
follow-
this.
yeah,
But go
on
ahead.
that point.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So how is that being handled? So if I am a nonprofit that got put into HHS, and I provide a service, am I then signing a contract to say, okay, here's the term, I'm going to provide the service for the next year and the next 2 years in return for this, so that, what's the lead time that groups may be provided if they're, to know whether or not they're getting funding year to year? Are we, signing multi-year grants or contracts, whatever we're calling them?
That would be the exact process once it moves into the base budget is a better conversation with the department, because I knew they do handle these things
So
differently.
each department is going to handle these differently?
Yeah, so it would follow the normal budget process. Another thing that's in the packet is, and I need to emphasize, there's also been a perception that Most nonprofit funding that the county gives out flows through the Community Grants NDA, or even has flowed through the Community Grants NDA. That is objectively not even remotely true. Less than 10%, might even be as low as 5 or 6% goes through the Community Grants NDA. Most nonprofit funding that we give flows right through the normal budget process.
Section G.
Yeah, so they would, not just Section G, but nonprofits also win competitively bid contracts all the time to provide services to the county. Things are bid out through procurement, and nonprofits do win them.
Lincoln, just to learn, I mean, we have lots of examples of this.
Exactly.
So could I ask, so 28 community grants programs were moved to the base budget, which $1.7 million. So a very small number. Some of that is because my understanding is huge categories were not moved into areas that they would have fit in. So youth programs, for instance, which would naturally be a rec department function, or senior programs, which would naturally be a rec department function, were largely not moved into the base budget, not because they don't fit with the department's overarching goals or follow the alignment with broader department goals, initiatives, better coordinate alongside similar programs instead of the grants process. Instead, there's not capacity in the department, which is a different standard. I mean, it's an important one, but it is different than the process that we laid out. So the first question that I would have is, can you provide us with a list of all of the community grants and the decisions to fund or not fund, including like if a department said we don't want this and OMB or the Office of Grants Management said we think it's a good fit, are you able to provide that to the council? And then which ones were not included and what the rationale was for not including it? Because that's something that could be shared with the council, including the rationale. We have a list of all the community grants.
I think that question will have to be answered by OMB of whether we can provide the decision-making. But with the process this year, we didn't, because of earlier processes, we had been asking those questions in detail. This year was really just kind of a cleanup year. Most of the major funding, and if you look, again, Circle 6, there's a budget table that shows the movement of money from the Community Grants NDA into department-based budgets. So in FY22 or in FY21, you had 3.8 million move. FY22, you had 700,000 move, roughly 700,000 move. And FY23, you had 2.3 million move. So this year, and even the 1.7 million, 600,000 of that is the place-based, is the Business Improvement District program, is shifting into CEC's base budget, which is a new program. So this year, in terms of legacy community grants programs, that's only about $1 million. It's a very small number. Again, some of that is the legal services program. It's a significant part of it. A huge chunk of that is the Kids Museum NDA, is we're moving the Kids Museum community grants funding into Kids Museum NDA. Like, why should we have these two? There makes no sense to have these two pools of money separate. So there's very, very few programs once you take out those big shifts that are actually moving. So this was very much just kind of a cleanup year. And that gets a little bit to an earlier question you asked is, are we going to keep on doing this year after year? No. That's, again, the strategic change, and the purpose of the Community Grants NDA is to have a series of programs that don't fit anywhere else, is that are flexible, that are, cross departments, or that departments might not see as a priority given their mission, or something that is maybe more tied into MCPS. And so, sorry, when
two huge categories. I mean, this is the part that doesn't quite connect, because two huge categories actually do absolutely naturally fit into a department. Mm-hmm. They're fit into rec. Rec's primary functions are youth programs and older adult programs, and they do a great job with those programs. And we do have some nonprofit partnerships related to like Rec Extra, where we get support for those types of programs. But we have whole categories of community grants that we may be moving to Collaboration Council or to some other entity because we're deciding that we don't have capacity to do it. So that's not the same.
So the capacity question doesn't, because the department's going to administer these programs anyways. So whether it moves to their base budget or not really doesn't change, or it hasn't changed, because these money sat in the community grants NDA, but the department administered it anyways. So when it shifts over their base budget, it's still the same department administering it. They still have the same capacity, still the same need. Even when we do,
What's the functional difference then of a department handling it? I guess you're saying the contract manager essentially
Yeah.
would still be in the department, whether it's in the grants program or whether it's in the base budget. It's just a difference of how it's procured.
It's going, not even procurement would change that much, or if we issue it as a grant and not a procurement, it would really just be funding and decision-making. So any program awarded, through, community grants, NDA, OGM, we're a very small office, we don't administer grants. Those are still going to be administered by the closest department to that subject area.
So what's the functional difference between being in the base budget and being in the grants program, but having your contract manager be in a department?
The decision of whether you got funding or not. So within, if it's in the base budget, the decision is made by the departments or whatever processes they go through in terms of awarding funding. Maybe they'll come to my office to help put it out as a grant. Maybe they'll go to procurement. Maybe they'll issue a multi-year award. If it goes through the community grants NDA process, then that's going to be a panel. A committee's going to vote on, make decisions in terms of who gets funding, who doesn't. Also, the strategic framework of it is going to be important. So when we put out a grants program, we put a framework of, for this grant program, for this 1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million, this is the priorities. We want proposals that meet these priorities. And so departments would probably be involved in that process if it's related to them. I think that's something that's going to be important, is give departments a bit more ownership and engagement in terms of the decision-making process over who gets money. But again, because these are kind of these flexible areas, it's going to be a multi-stakeholder decision where, yes, there's an engagement piece. When you look at the details of a lot of these programs, the ones remaining in the NDA, I spoke to a partner last week who had the same kind of confusion. When we're talking about a program, the person admitted, well, it's like, yeah, we get money from REC, but we're really an MCPS program. We engage with MCPS, we work in their schools, we do everything, we get our money, and they're our contract administrator, but when we actually do our activities, our partner is really MCPS, and we work with MCPS entities to do this programming. So that's where I think what the department would say is, like, we're not actually really the partner here. MCPS is really the partner. It's really tied into their work and their engagement. So
what are we going to solve as part of this process to address that issue? Because, one of the issues of MCPS is maintenance of effort.
Yeah.
And part of the goal of having these nonprofit partners, even those who work significantly in the schools, is that we can fund these programs outside of maintenance of effort so that we can be more nimble, so that we can change funding, so that we can try innovative and new things without forcing the county to commit to a program till the end of time.
And that's the value of having the community grants NDA, where we can be nimble and focused and compete these things out without it getting tied up outside of our jurisdiction. So we can set, and you as a council can set a block of money, put whatever strings or priorities on it that you want. It would be competed through us, and then we would make awards, and these programs would be ongoing. We can do multi-year awards. There's a whole range of options available, strategic options for you available to do this. So if we don't want it, we can still give money to a nonprofit, and they can still engage with MCPS. It's not going to change anything. They've already been doing this for years. It's just the funding would come through.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned that it's not going to change anything. We've spent 4 years, on the one hand, you don't want to be too disruptive. On the other hand, we spent 4 years changing a process, and we're creating a whole office and changing a whole system and shocking the system of the way things have been and the process that people became accustomed to. And the question is, what are we solving? And are we doing enough to actually address the underlying issues and concerns that have been raised? I hope that we have. I'll just make one note. I've had lots of examples of this, but just to give one that was recently raised to me, there's a nonprofit partner who receives a number of contracts in a number of different areas to do a number of things, a well-known commodity that provides health screening for hepatitis, particularly focused on one demographic, but serves everybody, but, has cultural competency to serve a particular community that doesn't always, that isn't always well served by the private market and even by county clinics. They weren't funded in the base budget. It's a health screening. It's directly tied to public health, they're not really sure why. I'm not really sure why. And, I think that's the aspect of this that I don't quite understand. The MCPS issue that you were talking about, where you just have a contract monitor, and the concern that maybe the departments have, which I can appreciate, of why do we have to monitor a contract that isn't doing services that are directly tied to our department? I signed up to do this work, and you're asking me to oversee unrelated work, as important as it might be. It's not my core competency, and someone else should do it. I've got enough on my plate. But in this case, it is directly tied to the department, and I'm not sure we have an understanding of the difference entirely of how those decisions got made and why.
And again, I think that would be a good conversation with the department within the hearing, or whether the committee or the broader session, of why did you recommend these ones but not that one?
But I think, so I'll just add, we're not going to be able to do that, right? For each department, have them come in and do that. And I think what I've heard, just as Council Vice President Friedson did, is that it's a systemic issue in how we roll this out, so that for organizations that were not then put in base budgets, some feedback should have been provided. When if you submit something, it's like when you get edits back from an editor saying like, oh, you didn't get in this submission of the journal this year because you were missing X, Y, and Z. You can try again to submit this again next year. That seems to have been lacking in this, and so longtime partners that we've had in the community who've been providing services were just told they were not in the base budget and not provided the feedback of why.
Yeah,
And they weren't even told. They found out when the base budget came out, some of them.
So I think that's the disconnect in how this was rolled out.
Well, I mean, everything is closed until the March 15th budget is released, and so all of it comes out, everything comes out at once.
We're trying to avoid.
But also, in terms of I've had a number of nonprofits come to me asking, why didn't I get moved in the base budget? And I said, please go talk to your department, and they can clarify that. So.
But this goes back to the problem before. So you are, I've worked for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
This is hell. What you are describing right now is pure hell for a nonprofit person, because you're doing your own budget. You have staff, you have rent to pay, you have people's health insurance to pay, and everything else. And if you can't budget and know, like, I used to get this county money and it makes up such a large percentage. Yep. And what you're saying is they're going to be, it's like a reveal, like the rest of us, when we get the county executive's budget on March 15th of whether or not they're getting funding again, which provides them very little lead time or how to then transition to get other funding. In the world, when usually you're working with grantees and you have a foundation or another funding source, you're working with that partner to know whether or not you're going to move forward with a grant, and you just don't find out one day when everybody else does on March 15th. So I think there's a real flaw in this process, and we are doing harm to people who are doing really good work in our community.
I'm very sensitive as well. I was also a nonprofit leader, and I put on my nonprofit hat daily when I think about how to roll this process out. That was the inclusion of the bridge funding, was to recognize that there's going to be a 6-week gap between when the county council passes its budget and when the next fiscal year is going to begin and funding should be renewed. Not every nonprofit contract from the community grant starts on July 1, but many or most do. And so the bridge funding was a way to move things, to create that kind of timeline or that gap from where you could at least know, or at least have 3 or 4 months of runway to find something else or to, again, reapply for funding. But that is, when you look at the historical process, it was usually because folks didn't know what was going to be in the council budget either. They would find out on May 20th, May 15th, whenever the county council would pass its budget, that would be released, or maybe even a little bit earlier, the reconciliation list would be finalized or things like that. They would have a couple months before it would start. So my experience is mostly with federal grants and receiving those. We would very rarely have less than 6 months notice that our grants would be would be canceled. And so that 6 months would allow me to wind down my programs, lay off staff on a reasonable basis, look for alternative funding sources. With the historical process, that was, again, a 6-week period of when, yes, there was the county executives grants. Those would be determined on March 15th, and council always approved them as submitted in the budget. And then there was the county council grants, which was less money, but still a considerable amount. They would not know until, they would not know until 6 weeks or 2 months before the fiscal year begins whether their money would be renewed. So that's part of why why I would like to go to this October 1 start date for all of these grants, is to give more lead time to organizations to when your money ends, or like when you know whether your funding is going to be renewed and when your next funding source is going to be beginning. Because again, I am very sympathetic to nonprofits who have that amount of notice. I mean, through my previous career, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine having 6 weeks to know whether I'm going to have to lay off staff or not and wind down the program. So creating this gap that's a strategic to make things easier for them. I think part of the equation we haven't talked about yet is that there are a large number of nonprofits, and this is because things were frozen through the pandemic, who have never had access to county resources. And so they have programs, they have needs, they have community members, they have staff they would like to hire or like to find ways to hire, and they've never had the opportunity to even apply for county funding through the Community Grants NDA. And even when you look at the current allocations that we have for community grants, those go back to FY18. To create the FY21 budget, we looked at FY18, 19, and 20. Everyone who got funded during those years, they got funded here. So if you didn't win money during those years, you didn't get funding. So our current allocations are all based on needs from 6 years ago. A lot's changed since the pandemic, and that's been a problem for current funders as well. Their existing program gets rolled over, largely without changes every year. So if there is an increase that's not related to inflation, and we haven't given an inflationary increase every year, then they have to eat that. We've had nonprofits say, hey, like, it's nice you give us this $50,000 for the scope, but there's this other problem over here we think is more urgent post-pandemic. We would love to just take our money and just change our program and attack this other need that we think is more urgent. And because of the way the county's contracting process works, you can't do that. So by kind of rolling things over year to year to year, that's also created other problems. By cracking it open, recompeting all these funding, again, which is not new. There used to be a county council grants process. There used to be a county executive grants process. What's changed is the pandemic, where everything got frozen and folks have gotten used to that. But before then, everyone would, compete these things on an annual basis anyways. So I think that's what we're going back to, is like, have a better process, have a better timeline from what was pre-pandemic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been concerned for years about how we treat our nonprofit community. And candidly, they're our partners, and we treat them rotten in many cases. My colleagues' discussion, to make someone wait to find out whether or not they have funds. These are small businesses. They're nonprofit businesses, but they're small businesses. And for them, what we used to do was have a handout of the grants on the 15th and say, this is what you're getting, or this is what you're not getting. We probably couldn't treat anybody any worse by doing that. Somebody on the 14th didn't know where they were, and on the 16th they knew where they were, but they had no way to appeal it. What we have done is we have changed a confusing system on its best day and made it a poor system in many ways. And I have to tell you, I believe that we changed our system for the worst. I really do. I think we have got to go back and figure out how we're going to keep nonprofits in business, who's doing the business of Montgomery County, if they weren't in existence in many cases. We mentioned that 1.7 million or whatever it is a small number. That's a huge number to a nonprofit. That's their lifeblood. And we're saying, well, we're going to get back to you, and we're going to give you rather than, that you have to fire people in June, you can wait till October. That's no way to treat anybody. That's not a way to treat what we know as Air Partners who are nonprofits. I know that we wanted to change the system for a better system, and at this point, I don't believe we have. I really do not.
I mean, one point with the March 15th deadline, that was the county executive's recommended budget. And part of the issue is when, if the CE is just going to recommend who he wants to fund, and then you have to fund that, or you feel obligated to fund that, that takes away your rightful and appropriate ability to influence, the county budget. I mean, if there's a lot of things in the county executive's budget that you don't want to or plan on funding, but they're out there, and the community might be expecting it. And so the same thing with these nonprofit allocations. And this came up last year during the joint GO-HHS hearing, where there was, I forget who specifically, but they expressed frustration in having these allocations out there and feeling, well, we didn't have the opportunity to prioritize these, we didn't have the opportunity to influence these, we didn't have the opportunity to set the targets.
Yep.
And so by moving to a system, which again is emulating more the federal system, where we have the county executive suggest blocks of money with strategic purposes attached to it, and then we do the process after the appropriation, it gives you your rightful authority to say, hey, we don't agree with that priority, we're going to shift it, or we think there should be more money or less money within that block of funding. So this is the painful year, but once we switch to this new system, then you will have your ability to influence the budget, completely without feeling obligated that you're being tied in, without this, and then having a timeline of when the grants begin to be more spaced out so that there is more of a runway back.
Mr. Murphy, do you believe this is a good system?
I believe it's that this transition, is a good system. And nonprofit Montgomery has been supportive of these reform efforts. It's imperfect, but again, these are some nonprofits. Yes, there are many nonprofits who might lose money, but there are lose funding. But there are a large number of nonprofits who have never had access to county resources.
I agree with that. We need to be doing that. But I'm concerned about what we've done. I really am. I made my point. I'll stop.
I appreciate that. So, again, I have been raising concerns about this transition and this process for a long time, and whether or not what we set out to do and what we were actually moving towards doing were aligned. Mm-hmm. I don't think they have been. And I still, to a certain extent, don't think that they are. So I want to take a step back and just raise a couple things that you noted. One of the main issues previously was that the county executive and the county council were supposed to have equal distributions of grants. And every year in the spending affordability guidelines, the county council would say, here's the allocation under the spending affordability guidelines, 50% for executive, 50% for council. And the county executive, not just this county executive's predecessors, it's no individual county executive's fault. I can't say if I were the county executive, I wouldn't do the same thing. But traditionally, the county executive would take up 75%, give or take, of the allocation and say, don't worry, I've left you 25%. And then two things would happen. 75% of the nonprofits would find out on March 15th whether or not they effectively won the county lottery. And then we kept a small amount of money that wasn't enough to fund the rest for everybody else, who then feverishly walked the halls of the county council and made their case for why they wanted to be funded with the remainder. And of course, no funding for any nonprofit was eliminated out of the budget because the council had no interest in taking away what had been publicly announced that were going to be dedicated to particular nonprofits. And it created many challenges, not least of which was those who are most politically connected and who had most resources and maybe who had the right board members or the right executive directors or who were in the right leadership Montgomery class with the right council member or whatever the case may be, got more access perhaps, or at least there was a concern of that or perception of that. And so there was a broad commitment to say, how do we make this more fair? how do we make this more equitable? How do we avoid the March 15th reveal, as you described it? Because what we used to have were two reveals, a March 15th reveal and a May 20-something reveal, or May 17th reveal, whatever the case may be. Second, third week of May, where the county council came out with its final grants number, which was just before straw votes, and everybody in the nonprofit community would wait with bated breath to see if they got a piece of the remainder of what was left. And slowly but surely, we got out of that system to a certain extent, but remained with remnants of it. We had a grants committee, and we had them make recommendations, and then we only left a smaller allocation, and there were a variety of changes, none of which worked totally well. Now we have addressed one issue, which I give you a lot of credit for. You have come up with a system where these are programs that can be held more accountable, that can be more metrics focused, that can be more aligned with a traditional procurement without necessarily being subjected to a year-long RFP, which is unreasonable for the type of services that we're talking about. You have done a good job of that. That was one of the goals, and I appreciate that, and I think the county will be better off for that. But what we haven't changed is the big reveal, the winning the county lottery, and what we haven't changed is the process-based problem of the county executive and the county council and some of the politicization. And right now, we have remained where the county executive is retaining the political dynamic of determining what goes into the base budget and presenting that to the county council. That has not really changed from what was suggested before and what is being suggested now. And as you noted, it's a large proportion, and it's going to be even greater. So, I do have concerns that what we set out to do, I'm not sure that we've fully addressed. So I do think we need to think through that, but I also agree with you that we need to have the gap, to provide a reasonable understanding. And I would say not just this year, we need to bake into the process as we move forward that the time at which you learn that you're not going to get renewed, that you have the 6 months that you used to get at the federal government. And that I think any process reasonably has, because the last thing that we would want to do is say, listen, we've gone in another strategic direction and the decision has been made, we can't fund everybody and you're not going to be funded. But having only 1 month or 2 months or 3 months even is really not enough time to then go find foundation money, and not to go to your office, which I think this is the function that you're supposed to be serving, and say, we're not going to get county government funding. Can you help us to identify additional resources? Or hopefully, even before that point, identify the organizations that are getting county government funding and say, actually, there are federal and state and foundation dollars that are available for this type of thing. Why don't we help you get those resources that would relieve the county's obligation? But that's the part here I think that is missing to a certain extent, where it seems like the county executive is retaining some of these aspects. The county council is not necessarily. Then the county council is going to provide certain allocations responding to the county executive's interest in policy areas that then will be funded presumably starting in October. So can you just speak to that a little bit of how we got here and whether you think this addresses the issues that I thought we had set out to address in the beginning?
Well, again, going back to, I think that a lot of the concerns, again, this perception that if you go in the base budget, you get permanent funding and it continues forever is again, incorrect. And I think in the deeper analysis could be done of the funds that have moved or moved 3 years ago. Are they still there? Are they still with the same partner? Are they still for the same service? Have they moved consolidated? I think that's a question I don't have the answers for, but I think it's worth asking. Because again, as we set up the new grants office, community grants NDA, or the community grants used to be the only grants opportunity the county offered. There was a once a year, one competition, one set of money going out there. Whereas going forward, what we're already seeing and what you already put in the FY23 budget, which we're implementing now, is all of these smaller, more targeted grants programs at key county issues, which nonprofits have the opportunity to apply for, and they have been. So, for example, the Underserved Communities Program, you put $750,000, or the CE put it $750,000, you approved it for, funds targeted at underserved communities. These are organizations who don't have or have very little, less than $100,000 of county funding. We got $9 million in applications from 130 organizations for $750,000. So that kind of shows the interest and engagement, even in these small pools of funding. For the DOT grant programs, we had something around 80 applications for their capital and operating grant programs. And so I think that is a strategic direction that I support, and I support the C doing that, is setting these more targeted grant pools of funding, not within the community grants NDA, but within departments' budgets, and putting more opportunities out there for nonprofits to bid on them through a grants process, a real grants process, and not going through the procurement mechanisms. Because procurement mechanisms are not built for the type of nonprofit programming that our nonprofits need. Again, coming from my experience, I had my organization about 23 federal grants a year. None of them were procurement processes or procurement actions. They were all grants agreements. I'd never seen a procurement action in my organization's budget. And so us moving to that for our nonprofit partners is, again, respect to the nonprofit partners who do this important work, give them money in a format that works for them. That is going to be critical.
Yeah, and I think you've done, again, I think the process that you have set up, that you have expertise in from the federal government, which I think has been a real value to the county, I appreciate, because I do think that part of it is a big improvement. And I do, I appreciate where Councilmember Katz was going with his concerns. I think that is an area where you are right, that this is better than what we previously had. But I think some of the broader concerns, are legitimate here. And I think, I guess one of the questions is the underserved grant program for those organizations that have received less than $100,000. Who is running that program? What department?
That's being run through my office. So
Okay.
we collected the applications, we're in the process of reviewing them and scoring them, and then we'll be administrating the contract.
So this is where I'm a little confused. I will admit. Originally, I thought that was the plan moving forward, that we were going to figure out who goes into the base budget because they're providing core social safety net services that are directly aligned with the department. And then there would be a category, perhaps a broad category of nonprofits that don't meet, neatly within a particular department. And those would be run through this new Office of Grants, which would both run these programs and these grant processes and help provide technical assistance and support to organizations to help them find other sources of revenue and other technical assistance, so that we would wean off the county being the primary source of support for many of these organizations, because we just can't afford to help everybody every year for everything. Unfortunately, we wish we could, but we can't. But the way that it was described earlier, the departments are going to run this, and it's really no different whether you're in the base budget or you're in a grant. So can you just explain the difference between the underserved small grant program that your office is running versus another grant program that's going to be run by a different department, and how we're deciding that, and who's deciding that, and when that happens?
Well, the CE puts, proposes pools of grant funding to put in department-based budgets or to put in the community grants NDA. So where it makes strategic sense, if you want to create a pool of funding, which you did with the newcomers program, $200,000 that went into HHS, went into the division that already oversees all those types of programming, or with the abortion access program, $1 million that was put in the child and maternal health care division. They're the experts. They're the ones who should have the policy oversight of it. My office's function is to run the competition. It's just the same way you throw a procurement action through the Office of Procurement, and they oversee that, making sure it's complies with county regulations, procurement laws, best practices, all that. If there's going to be a grant competition, yes, the money is sitting with, child and maternal health. Yes, they are the experts on that. I can't structure a program on that. They have the way I explain it is they have the policy leadership. I have the process leadership. So they come to my office, we help them run a competition. We have an online grants application platform. It runs through our platform. We become the neutral arbiters of that process. So making sure it's complying with all the different laws, regulations that are applicable. But really, they're the ones who, on everything that needs policy leadership, like selecting a review committee, things like that, they have ownership of it and we work together.
So the underserved program, what department will those grants go into? What will they do and what will they go into?
That was purposely left very flexible because the idea was give the nonprofit community in these communities to say, hey, this is what your needs are, or this is what our needs are. This is what we see as our highest priority. This is a solution that we think we have or a way of addressing this problem. Give us funding to it. So it was intentionally left extremely flexible. So what we would do is we would identify, once decision made on who's getting funded, we would identify the closest department, or if it's something that's really doesn't fit anywhere, then OGM would oversee it. There's another program, Nonprofit Technical Assistance and Management Support Grants. Those would sit with us because, again, nonprofits work with every single department out there. So it's really looking at what is the strategic, intent of the program and that pot of funding, and then with you or with the county executive, determining where does that fit best in the budget. Is it something that doesn't fit anywhere? OGM should oversee it. Is that something that's tied to rec? Is it tied to?
So why aren't you running the community grants NDA process? Why is that then being run through various departments depending on the
we run the
category?
It's the administration of the awards. The end award administration is different than the process. So it's just too big. I mean, that's $6 million right there. So that's a huge volume of programs. So we're going to have to rely on
So the idea is for moving forward, the community grants program, once we transition, I just want to make sure we understand this because I don't think it's been terribly clear up to this point. Your office is going to run a program, and if, let's say, one of the categories we allocate to is to youth programs, then either Collaboration Council, for instance, which was suggested last year, will actually be the contract monitor for those programs, or the rec department or some other area, or no, that's not how it's going to work, and we're going to give the money to Collaboration Council and they're going to do it themselves.
I would think it would be the latter, and that's where, as a nonprofit leader, we would get chunks of money from the federal government to do grants programs. Again, the priorities would be determined by our funder. My nonprofit would get the money. We would compete out because we were more nimble. We had easier procurement mechanisms and all that. We would do a grants process. We would distribute the money. We would oversee the different micro grants. This is to youth programs. And we would do the report back up. But it's a similar relationship to what we have with the Arts and Humanities Council or McHale. We give them a big chunk of money. They run the grants process on our behalf. They report back to how they do it. If we're not happy with them, we can give the money to somebody else or put additional strings on, set different priorities. So I believe that is what Carolyn, you were suggesting last year with Collaboration Council. If it's these youth programs, we would just give them a big chunk of money, define it as much as we want to or feel we need to, and they would run a grants process on our behalf. Same as McHale, same as Arts and Humanities Council. And there are, in the health sector, there are a number of contracts. They're given out as contracts, but different partners do micro grants on our behalf. So again, that's something with my office. We can help departments develop these types of tools to maybe you don't want to be doing this grants program yourself. Maybe it makes more sense to have to hire additional staff to administer these programs. You can give them out to another partner. They can do a grants program.
I guess my concern is this could be a huge category.
Yeah.
And we're setting up this whole office to have a competency to run these processes, and then we're taking a huge chunk of the money and we're moving it to an outside entity, and then we're going to determine whether or not it's going well. I mean, I chaired the Collaboration Council board. I mean, I have a great affinity and affection for that organization, but just from a process standpoint, it just seems odd. I mean, if we're going to do that, it seems odd that we would need to set up this office in the first place. I mean, it seems like, why don't we just give out money to organizations like Collaboration Council and McHale, as you've suggested, and let them do it? I'm not sure I quite.
Well, that's not what the county executive has proposed in his budget in doing.
So what's your process that you're proposing that council staff is not proposing on how to handle youth programs and other programs that departments won't take into the base budget.
So it is, I just want to note, it is 4:30. And we do have another session on this scheduled for Friday, but I think where Council Vice President Friedson was going is, Mr. Murphy or Ms. Chen, if you want to just like lay out what the ask is for this budget, we won't get into details this afternoon, but that's what we'll come back to on Friday. I think that's where you were going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the ask for this year?
Okay.
Okay. There's no specific, so we've spent most of our time on community grants. We did not move on to cost sharing, so we'll just make sure that's put up on Friday. The ask is actually specifically only to the Office of Grants Management with an additional 2 positions to add to their 3 to have a total of 5 in order to have an additional outgoing source grants person and an administrative person. That is the actual budgetary fiscal impact ask. The other 2 discussions are process driven. The fiscal impact is exactly the same from the previous year.
I mean, how we fund the office depends on what the process is going to be.
I'd also like to note that the purpose of this office isn't a $11 million community grants dole out to individual organizations. The purpose of the office in the legislation was to increase the capacity of departments 100-fold. We're not looking at, $50,000 here, $20,000 there for a couple of organizations for whatever the wins are that year. This is for massive grants to be applied for by departments, which is a larger process that I think we should spend time talking about on Friday, because we are only touching, about 22 organizations that get the majority of community grants funds, and no more than 100 that have been applying for these funds for as long as I've done my analysis for 17 years now. So I think we've lost that in this discussion, and so that if we're going to move on Friday because there's no fiscal impact to either of these recommendations going forward, I think we should also add the fact that we're looking to increase massive capacity, not just clear up a legacy process that you have all inherited for many years. This started under Duncan days. So if we could move towards a bigger vision, I think that would help clear things up.
Sure. Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry, we just received the packets this morning. So is there in the PDF or anything, I'm looking for a description of the 2 positions and what they would do to prepare us for Friday?
So there would be a second outgoing grants program manager, and this person will be focused on us distributing grants.
Okay.
The other incoming grants program manager, which has been filled, and my whole team is filled, is they focus on looking at outside grants opportunities and helping departments apply. So because of the volume of not just community grants in these programs, but because departments are using their own base budget funds to create new grants programs, targeted grants programs, they're coming to me with, we want to put money out as a grant. Again, this is base budget funds. Maybe some of it might have been community grants at one point. They're going to be coming wanting to do their own mini grants, their own types of grant programs. We facilitate those grants programs, help them hold the competitions, help them distribute the funds, draft the grants agreements, put the grants agreement out. They administer those funds, they monitor those grants agreements. So again, getting to my office is just kind of the gatekeeper, making sure that these grants go out. So we're expecting a huge volume of these programs. I think FY23 budget, the council put in 10 or 12 pools of funding for these more targeted grants programs. I can see that growing a lot with departments, again, repackaging their existing funding and putting it out as grants. So that's where this outgoing grants program manager comes in, with just additional grants programs going out the door, faster money in nonprofits' pockets, faster grants agreements being signed, faster processes. You submit your application, it closes 30 days later, you find out whether you got money or not. Because that's really been my issue this year, is for the most of it being a team of one, is having the capacity to really get these programs and the money out the door as fast as I would like, and as fast as I think we can. So, and then the administrative services coordinator would just be a pure administrative capacity, again, moving paper, moving these grants programs, providing administrative support, getting the grants agreements built and signed, and coordinating all those processes, making sure it's reviewed by the appropriate folks. And again, just to remind everyone, I think a slowdown with developing the grants mechanism is just being sensitive to incidents like Peter Bang, where someone took advantage of lax county policies to exploit millions of dollars, and that's not going to happen under my watch. So part of this, as we're looking at this kind of community grants reform NDA, it's also building in a resilient system for us to actually be putting money out the door as real grants. And more flexible, more usable by our nonprofit partners. Again, when I did that survey, it was interesting in that a lot of the results focused on the mechanism, not on the competition, how much for this or that. It's what is your grant going to look like? What is this agreement going to look like? Because that is our biggest headache, is dealing with a procurement contract that's not been built for a nonprofit program. So if we can provide this grant agreement, and we've piloted them this year, they're working. What we need the staff to get up to scale to be putting out, 200, 300, 400 of these a year. Most of these are going to be administered by departments themselves, where it's appropriate. But we need that administrative capacity to be able to move these in a timely manner. So again, there isn't that gap. We can start putting out this money quicker and easier than traditional.
And just sorry, one clarification. It says on the PDF that the department has 5 full-time equivalents right now. Is that correct?
No, we have 3.
It's going
It'll go
to
to 5.
Right, so thank you.
That's requested.
Yeah,
recommended.
got it.
And we are supported by OMB Shared Services team, but OMB Shared Services, the volume of document approval and workflow that we're going to be doing, that's not something that they're set up to handle. They help us with all the general procurement, office logistics types of things.
Great.
So we do need this extra administrative support.
Okay. And I know we haven't gotten to the cost sharing this afternoon, but can we just do a highlight of what we need to talk about on Friday regarding that?
So do you want to go?
The proposed amount from the county executive is $3 million for cost-sharing grants, the same amount as last year, fiscal year 23. The difference is the timing of the application. At this time, we would have already run an application for cost-sharing grants so you would know before at least the May review for the council. We would know in April after the state legislation has passed theirs. It was not run this year, so the executive is proposing to run this in the fall, $3 million, same amount, but a different timing. The recommendation before you is to reduce the program. It was the same recommendation as last year, as to cut the cost sharing grant amount until there has been a review of outstanding capital grants from the past couple of years, or in this case since 18, that have not been used, and to come up with a process that aligns with the state legislative assembly's bond bill program. And also right now there are no racial equity or social justice elements in the cost sharing program. So the recommendation still stays the same. I think the discussion on Friday will be about timing, whether or not, because we did not have the same timing this year as we've done previous years for cost sharing, should we delay that to the fall, which then coincides with the fiscal year 25 state legislative assembly, or should we put both of them in both years in the fall, or both years in the spring? So I think that's a discussion on timing. But right now, in terms of the actual cut, if we were to reduce the cost sharing budget by $3 million, it would not change any designations, and that those funds have not been applied for or competed for. No break in service at all. These are state bond bill matching grants, so application in October would still work within the timing of the parameters of bond bills of organizations. And just to make a point that I spoke with Katz's office about, the past 5 years, we've done an audit of all the state bond bills that have been received by Montgomery County nonprofits, and made sure that those that needed a match or had applied for a match did receive it, or at least have a chance to apply. So as of 21, there are no nonprofit state bond bills that have not been matched. So we're starting at zero.
Mr. Murphy?
So the intent with this pot of money is it's the exact same amount as last year, so there's no fiscal impact between this year and last year. The 4 pots of money it's been divided up to are rough proportions of what we gave last year in terms of cost sharing capital grants, only $2 million is supposed to be for state matching. The issue that we've run into year after year after year is by having, again, the process before March 15th is that, and being released on March 15th, is we were never very good at actually matching the county executive's recommended awards to what the state actually gave in terms of bond bills. The county council has perfect information on what the state does. So instead of having a process and having the results be misaligned, and so yes, eventually all the nonprofits maybe in the next year would be made whole or would be matched. The county executive is deferring it to you when you have perfect information. You know who's going to get state bond bills. So 1.25 million is intended for non-arts grants. And then 750,000 is intended for arts grants, and that's typically how we have broken those up. But then the other million would be divided for small projects under $100,000. And so the strategic goal of that is an equity goal. Last year, the county executive and with the county council's approval, we funded a large number of small nonprofit type programs, adding an extra freezer to a food hub for $10,000, adding an arts center addition to some museum for $30,000. There's a lot we could spread that out to be much more impactful. But the misalignment is you'd have a different process for the small money that you would for the big money. Because you need a different set of documentation, you need a different set of proportion, different scale of project. So if there's money left over that you wouldn't match, we could run a competition after the appropriation and then, put that money out there. But by delaying the timing, again, it's perfect information. If we have the process, say in the summer or fall, if they find out they're winning an award, they can go to their state delegate with letter in hand showing, hey, Montgomery County gave me $200,000. Can you match this? Or where you're sitting, you know exactly that the state delegate got that organization $200,000. You can make the decision now to match it. So but we've never done a good job, or we've never been able to match it. And speaking with my colleagues in IGR and others, it's just the way the state process works. It's almost impossible. So that's the change in timing. In terms of building equity into the process, that's for all of our grants, we're building equity into the process. That's the heart of our organization. That's the heart of our legislation that creates us. But we haven't done that yet with the cost sharing because wait to see what your intent is and how you want to approach this.
I'll turn to Council Vice President Fritzen in a minute. So, but for this year, if we did do the shift, we're not leaving anybody hanging that got money this last session in Annapolis.
No, because the funding has not been allocated. So organizations haven't allocated money. The county executive's budget provides bandwidth for you to match them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wouldn't, the goal, if we had done a process, likely some folks would have been left hanging with the allocation. So again, this gets to why doing a process before they're an appropriation doesn't really make a lot of sense. It causes more problems than it solves. So this way, you have perfect information on what the delegation has delivered to us. You can use the money that the county executive has set aside to match that amount to make sure no one's doing it. And if there's money left over, you could cut it, you could reallocate it. I mean, that's your discretion as the council.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, a couple things. So we have not committed this funding to particular nonprofits, but we have publicly committed that this funding was going to be available to all nonprofits. So saying that we're not going to cut, we're not going to fund $3 million would be taking away the money that we said that they were going to have available to apply for this year. I mean, I went back and looked because that was my understanding, and I looked at your slide deck, and that's what your slide deck says. It allocates it specifically to these purposes. So if we delay it another year, we would be delaying for a year $3 million of funding to various nonprofits who, in your outreach, have said that the intention of the executive branch and the grants office was to provide this funding to have it be available pending council approval, right?
Yes, that's a county executive recommendation, which I support.
Okay, great. So I'm just put my cards on the table. I'm not interested in removing the $3 million. I am interested in learning the intention here of whether or not it's your intention that the county council between March 15th, this year and moving forward, between March 15th and final approval of our budget, whether we allocate these specific dollars to specific organizations or whether we appropriate these in buckets for your office, in the categories as you've described: arts facility capital grants larger, arts facility capital grants smaller organizations, the major projects state match for non-arts facilities, and the capital grants non-arts for the smaller, whether the intention is for us to allocate the broad categories of funding, and then your office would have a process to review the state allocations and fund them, or whether we would be funding them during our process.
The intent is that you would decide allocations during your process, because there is a list out there of who got capital bond bills and for what purpose. And the way that the funds were apportioned was, at least for the $2 million for state matching, the way the funds were apportioned from last year is roughly equivalent to the previous year. So if we got $2.2 million in state bond bills, and you wanted to dip into the other money, that could make a lot of sense. Or if there's only 1.5 million, in state matches that really feel like matching, or you feel that should be matched or are available to be matched, then, we could have a competition afterwards and then reallocate whatever money is, or like have a competition and then allocate money, whatever is available. So
I think the larger ones will be easier for us to determine during our budget. My sense would be the million would be very difficult for us at that level. And so perhaps, coming back on Friday to have a discussion of how to handle those, what we're prepared to do this budget cycle and what we might be prepared to do in subsequent budget cycles, just realistically in the few weeks that we have to approve a budget.
But the 1 million, the non-state matching, that's intended to have a competition. But either way, it would have a separate, because again, these are small awards, small capital projects. There really should be a different competition for different sizes of money. It should be more scaled to the amount of money.
Yeah, and my understanding, as you said, was that was the intention of the office, to address some of the equity concerns, to have funds dedicated to smaller amounts for smaller projects to be more competitive for emerging organizations or organizations with fewer resources. There's a big difference between a large arts organization or a large nonprofit in a county facility that has been around for 35, 40 years and a new organization that emerged to provide, as a food pantry. Where, the chair and I were at an event just yesterday where one of those organizations would be an example, and funding a freezer, as you noted, which would be helpful to an organization of that, which $15,000 might not be worth it to a large organization to go through this process, but for a small organization, it could be existential. So,
If I may add to that, smaller grants is an important learning opportunity for these small nonprofits.
Yeah.
They apply for, they win the grant, they administer it, they gain a lot of experience, they grow, they develop, and then that builds them up for the next time. And if they're successful, when they go after other foundation money, federal money, state money, more of our money, and they have that track record of success, it builds up. And I think that's the goal with a lot of these small programs, the Underserved Communities Program. This is create these smaller opportunities, again, tailored for smaller organizations so they can get that initial experience, they can get that initial grant and learn and develop those skills so that we can start giving them bigger and bigger amounts. So that's a longer term strategy of how we build up a lot of these organizations who have never received county funding before.
Now 10 to 5, and I was trying to get everybody out here, and I failed that. But all right, Mr. Murphy, this was incredibly helpful. I will say that, so our decision points, just because we are going to have a very long meeting on Friday, is going to be your request for the two positions, and I'm going to say, based on the conversation we just had, that this committee is wanting to keep the $3 million in the budget this year, and so we can talk about the cost sharing as well. But I think that's a decision, and that there's other things that we need to do. I think this was beneficial. It's a conversation we'll continue to be having with you, but there are other things that we need to provide direction on. Let us know before Friday afternoon.
I think then it's actually just high priority for the two the two new positions, and then there's no fiscal impact to the other two departments, so that would not be a reckless add. So if on Friday you wanted to talk on process, we can also schedule a completely different time to do that, or if you have more discussion on the budget side, like for this particular budget. So you've made the decision, I just want to make sure you know they've made the decision for this budget cycle. It's to add high priority to the rec list for the two people, and then the rest are not on, they're not touched.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think we made the decision on the two positions. No, I think we were still, that's something people did not weigh in on. We asked questions because the packet wasn't clear on what these two positions would be doing. So if there's more information you can provide us, that would be beneficial as well. The only decision this committee made was that we unanimously agree that we want to keep the $3 million in for the cost sharing for that. And we need to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do need to clarify on Friday the timing of the community grants and whether the funding, whether we're set up with the funding available to carry out the process with the time as we have heard, because I think there is a disagreement, it sounds like, between council staff and the grants office of the gap funding and the timing of a new process and how that will work. And I do think, depending on what direction we go, and that could have a fiscal impact that we need to understand.
Yes, if you want to extend the bridge funding, that would have a cost to it, and we could help calculate that cost of what it would be. But yeah, there would be, depending on how you do the process and what timeline, there would likely be fiscal impacts.
Yeah, and if we could be ready, Madam Chair, thank you for your indulgence, but if we could be ready to understand the timing, because I think that would impact, as you heard from all of us, of the bridge, if we want to provide 3 to 4 months, as you noted, which would be a reasonable time frame, at what point will community partners know whether or not they're being funded? When will that process start? When will it end? How and when will they be notified? And then at that point, the clock would start for 3 or 4 months. And is the funding that is being offered in this budget as recommended by the county executive, does it reflect that? And I think we need to have a better understanding of exactly how that would work.
Right.
So just clarification that we're not, or just for the analysis going forward on the community grant contracts that are remaining in the NDA, that can be analyzed, but will you still be discussing shifting full base budget and those implications? Just because of that, we'll do the inflationary increase adds and so is it fully in discussion? So like individual orgs that are being shifted either to the base or to another NDA, and also if we shift all grants to base budget would be subject to the reconciliation list of the extra inflationary interest. I just wanted to, it sounds like we're going through each contract to find out how much would be shifted to which side.
No, I think no, not at all. I think what we're asking is, what we want to make sure is that nobody's left hanging. So if from the time somebody may find out whether or not they're in the base budget or they are receiving a community grant, if they went this way and the answer was no, and then they went this way and the answer is no, we want to make sure they have at a minimum 3 months to recalibrate. And if that's not what's currently in the plan, then we want to know what the fiscal impact of that is. So does that make sense? Right? Did I get that right? Yeah.
The current plan is 3 months.
Okay, it is.
I can detail all of this on Friday.
Yeah, if you could, because I think that's our concern, and it was a bit confusing in terms of just making sure that either somebody was going to be in the base budget, or they had the opportunity to get a community grant, or we were giving them, if they didn't go either of those directions, they received funding. I think that's important, and if we had that information before Friday, that would be terrific, so that if it has a fiscal impact, then we could figure it out. So that would be really helpful, and if it was by Wednesday, that would be great. And then And if you had further information explaining the two positions and what they would be doing in the office, that will help us decide if that's a high priority or not.
Okay, this is very clear.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, Ms. Shen, and thank you very much for being here. And I know it was a very long afternoon, and we really appreciate all of your work. Thank you.